All right, the time is now 5:30, maybe 2, on Wednesday, July 17th, 2024, and this public meeting of the D.C. State Board of Education will come to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Director Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Kelly. Representative Villaflor. Representative Washington.
Present.
Representative Yarkin. Representative Best. Representative Chang. Representative Goulet.
Here.
Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative O'Leary.
Here.
Representative Reed. Representative Williams. Vice President Patterson. Here. President Thompson.
Present.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Perfect. A quorum has been determined, and the State Board will now proceed with the business portion of the meeting. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda? Okay. All right. If no changes, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Before we do that, there was one witness, I think, that had gotten the information in potentially, met the cutoff, but it hadn't got on the circulated agenda. So let me try to just get that name for you, and if we could add them to the end of the list. I think it was Vincent Johnson. If we could make sure that they are added to the public testimony list.
Yeah, I tend to do a call at the end just to check if
Okay.
anybody makes it that far. So happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I appreciate it.
No worries. I appreciate you looking out for your constituent. So if there are no other corrections or additions, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. I'm looking for yays and nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We now have the minutes from our July 3rd working session. Is there a motion to adopt these minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, the motion is to adopt the minutes. I'm again asking for yeas and nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. On behalf of the D.C. State Board of Education members, I want to welcome our guests and the viewing public, to our public meeting. The State Board holds its regularly scheduled public meetings on the third Wednesday of every month at the Old Council Chambers at 441 4th Street Northwest. Our meeting is also being broadcast live via the District Knowledge Network. This evening, the board looks forward to hearing from 21, now 22, public witnesses. We encourage the public to sign up every month to share testimony. As a reminder, sign-up closes 48 hours before the public meeting, and the link can be found at www.sboe.dc.gov. Over the last month, the board has welcomed our new Strategic Communications Fellow, Catherine Chittenden. We want to recognize and also thank Alyssa Rashaw for her service over the last year as our agency's first Strategic Communications Fellow. She has been marvelous. We also met with Interim Superintendent Mitchell and the Office of the State Superintendent to provide introductions, discuss back-to-school standards implementation, and other upcoming areas of collaboration. On behalf of the State Board, we're looking forward to welcoming Interim Superintendent Mitchell to her first public meeting. At this time, we normally would have superintendent's remarks, but I understand she is in traffic in the 100-degree weather, so we will welcome her when she arrives. I am happy to call up the panel, unless that is an arrival. No, okay. So instead, we are actually going to move to our expert panel. Tonight's panelists will provide us with a better understanding of the DC student health landscape, including access to school nurses, medication, and more. We are excited to hear from Sarah Bell, faculty, Georgetown, University School of Nursing, Whitney Carrington, Director, Student Health Services, DC Public Schools, Leanna Jenkins, student, McKinley Tech High School, and Anna Rodriguez, Parents Amplifying Voices in Education. You all are welcome to come to the table now. As you all approach, please note that each of you will have up to 5 minutes, and then we will move to one round of questions from the State Board. Once you all are assembled, we will begin first with Ms. Bell, and you all are welcome to start with when you're ready. I will note, we always do a housekeeping note. Please speak directly into the microphones. They should already be on the table. Yes, they should already be on the table. And of course, you have the yellow, red, and green. Feel free to start when you're ready.
Okay. Hello, good evening. Panelists, DC State Board of Education, esteemed staff and community members. My name is Sarah Bell, and I work as faculty for Georgetown University School of Nursing. I have over 20 years of nursing experience and 12 years of school nursing experience, and I currently serve as a public health school nurse leader in addition to my work at Georgetown. That's my full-time job. I'm very excited to be here this evening and have the opportunity to talk to you about school nursing, the type of education school nurses need, the type of competencies needed for school nursing, how to increase our nursing workforce by exposing high school students to career opportunities, and some ideas on how to hire and retain school nurses. Georgetown University School of Nursing is mission-driven with a vision to develop nurses to advance social justice, dismantle oppressive conditions, promote health equity for all, and shape the future of nursing. This will be achieved through the pursuit of excellence, innovation, critical consciousness, leadership in education, practice, research, scholarship, and service. I want to highlight service. We are committed to a culture of excellence, diversity, equity, and belonging, justice, and advocacy. Cura personalis, or care for the whole person, is one of our main mottos, and for people and for others. Through our programs, students are exposed to many different types of nursing, including school nursing. School nursing is extremely important in improving health outcomes of K through 12 students, and I am very passionate about this topic. Due to the current nursing shortage and even more significant shortage in school nursing, this is extremely important and timely tonight. I'm going to try to stay on my 5 minutes, but I know I might get cut off, and I'm okay with that. One statistic that I just want to definitely point out is that there's 193,100 projected job openings nationally for registered nurses on average per year until 2032, that's projected. However, for the decades between 2022 and 2032, we expect only 177,400 nurses to enter the workforce. This is less than what's needed to fill 1 year of projected openings in nursing. Retirement is one of the main reasons school nurses are leaving the profession. Other reasons include less than adequate salary, misconceptions about nursing and school nurses, and nursing burnout. Another statistic is only 34.2% of RNs working in schools make greater than $60,000 per year, compared to 69.5% of the RN workforce as a whole. The important impact that nurses make within schools is under-recognized. Nurses have the capacity to partner with school administrations, teachers, families, students, and community partners. They can be robust members of the school programming in health and wellness education as well. You can address absenteeism and things to that nature. Is that 5 minutes? Okay. Only 65.7% of schools have access to full-time nurses. So this is just an important statistic to remember as well. Some of the topics that you asked us to discuss today, I'm going to start with one and keep going. How can we encourage school nursing as a career choice? What kind of exposure do nursing students get to school nurses in schools of nursing? These are very important points, and I will say that in terms of the exposure that school student nurses and higher levels of education get to school nursing, it depends on the locality, it can depend on the university. But at Georgetown, we do expose our nursing students to school nursing through public health and through pediatrics. Ideas for making this relationship more robust is that the school district could meet with local schools of nursing, like we're doing right now, to emphasize the importance of student nurses and exposure to school nursing. Schools could also partner with outpatient clinics, hospitals to attract nurses to school nursing. What is the role of the school nurse and what nurse competencies are required to be a school nurse? Just to highlight a couple, CPR, BLS certification, including use of the AED, is extremely important and is one of the competencies for most school nursing. I don't know that I've ever, okay. Nursing process and nursing assessment, I'm not gonna list all of them. Communicable disease response and emergency preparedness, this is extremely important as we've seen in COVID-19. How can we increase the nursing workforce and how can we engage with high school students interested in school nursing? Some ideas is to have school nurses participating in high school career fairs. So with different universities, we could be at career fairs. Also making sure career counselors at the high school level know about the field of nursing and specifically school nursing and having resources to give to high school students. You could also partner high school students with their school nurse to do projects or to learn, and maybe not at their school, but at a different school. How to get nurses into school nursing and how to hire and retain school nursing. I have 11 seconds. So basically, competitive pay, highlight benefits, make sure they're a part of your team, and have ongoing partnerships with your schools of nursing around you. Thank you all.
Good evening, representatives of the State Board of Education and members of the public. My name is Whitney Carrington, and I'm the Director of Student Health Services for the District of Columbia Public Schools. My role centers on ensuring comprehensive health services for all students. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about student health. Today, I will be speaking about 4 topics: access to school nurses and medication, automated external defibrillators, AEDs, health education for students, and DCPS immunization efforts, and our partnership with Vision to Learn. School nurses are essential to ensuring students have access to necessary health care throughout the day. School nurses who work in DCPS schools are employed by Children's School Services and contracted through the Department of Health. CSS is responsible for hiring nurses and ensuring school health suites meet standards set by DC Health. At the beginning of each school year, Health Suite staff members with school principals meet together to review and discuss the school's emergency response plans, students' medical plans, and any other pertinent health information. Health Suite staff are also available throughout the year to provide education resources to school staff about specific medical conditions as appropriate. For example, Health Suite staff can help school staff understand how to support students with asthma, hypoglycemia, or seizures. In addition to providing on-site support to students, CSS has initiated telehealth services across schools and DCPS to allow students to be seen by medical professionals while in the building. In addition to Health Suite staff, DCPS works to ensure that at least 2 staff at each school are trained in the administration of medication. This training ensures that in the event Health Suite staff are not present at school, or if students with medication needs are on a field trip, students will be kept safe and have access to the medications they need. The administration of medication training is provided by DC Health in collaboration with CSS. The training includes how to administer epinephrine, albuterol, glucagon, and other common medications. While DCPS works to ensure that 2 staff per school are trained, under the terms of our collective bargaining agreement, DCPS cannot require staff to complete training, although many volunteer to complete it, and we thank them for that. All DCPS schools maintain functional AEDs in every building. These devices are crucial for addressing cardiac emergencies promptly, supported by a trained workforce, including school nurses, athletic staff, and others certified in first aid and AED usage. Regular maintenance and inspection by Rescue One ensures these devices always remain operational and ready for use. Our athletics team also maintains emergency action plans that provide guidance for our athletic staff on how to respond to cardiac emergencies that occur during athletic practices or competitions. DCPS uses the district's health and physical education standards to educate students at each grade level. These standards include the teaching of first aid to students in 7th grade, Additionally, DCPS requires students to learn CPR as a part of health class, a graduation requirement. This teaching is done through DCPS's Emergency Preparedness Unit. Also included in that unit is Stop the Bleed, which goes beyond teaching first aid and teaches students how to address puncture wounds. To further support our commitment to student health, DCPS has implemented robust immunization efforts aimed at safeguarding the well-being of our student population. Partnering closely with DC Health, we've leveraged our school-based health centers and hosted dedicated clinic days to ensure convenient access to vaccines for all students. Additionally, we have initiated proactive outreach strategies such as call-a-thons and phone bankings to inform parents about immunization requirements and status updates. Collaborative messaging efforts from the Chancellor reinforce the importance of immunizations in maintaining a healthy school environment. And lastly, last school year, we held and organized a migrant health fair led by the Student Supports Division, where immunizations were provided to and just allowing our reach to extend beyond our typical outreach to ensure equitable access to healthcare resources for all students. Vision to Learn is another partnership we have made significant strides in addressing vision equity. And so because of time, we've been able to screen over 5,000 students with eye exams and provide free glasses to over 700 students. So these initiatives just underscore our efforts to ensure everyone has our commitment to comprehensive student health. So in conclusion, our collective efforts enhance student access to healthcare, medication, and life-saving equipment. I look forward to any questions that you all may have, so thank you for your time.
Hello. Hello, my name is Leona Jenkins. I'm an upcoming 9th grader who will attend McKinley Technology High School in the fall. I am testifying today on the importance of having a full-time nurse at the school. I am a student who was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was younger, and it has been hard for a lot of us, especially with people not understanding some of our needs at times. A ton of times the nurse wasn't in the building, so we had to call our parents and go home. My mom hired an advocate and got a 504 plan for me. I thought it was going to help me so I could go to the nurse without questions being asked, but I was wrong. In 7th grade, a teacher asked, did you get your hearing fixed in front of everyone? When I got the 504, it took access away from me in math because they moved me to a different class. I was in a class with peers with learning and medical disabilities or behavior problems. This took away from what I've already learned, and I started to repeat what I already did in my other class. I was annoyed because having a medical disability doesn't mean I'm not capable of doing things, nor does it mean I have a learning disability. In that class, I tended to stay quiet and stick to myself because they didn't understand that work wasn't what I needed. I told my mom I wanted the 504 gone because I wasn't getting the things I needed, especially in math. My mom ended up moving me because they wouldn't put me back in my original class, and I started attending McKinley Middle School in November. This allowed me to be in a classroom that allowed me to learn things that I wasn't learning prior to my 504. I haven't had a seizure in 3 years, but just 2 weeks ago I had more than 2 back-to-back. I am now going into 9th grade and dealing with my health. I don't want a 504, but I want a nurse to be available when we need them and for other people in the building to know about our struggles. My mom shouldn't have to always be there. A nurse should always be kept in school. I have seen my classmates leave in ambulances, dealing with complications. Me and other kids have watched teachers and staff not knowing what to do. I'm happy that I will be attending McKinley Tech. I know administration will help me, but it's not their job. I want someone who has a medical background to assist me when I'm in a medical crisis. I feel safe with a medical professional. When I grow up, I want to be a neurosurgeon or a neurologist so kids like me can have someone who knows who matter to.
Good afternoon. My name is Ana Rodriguez. I am a proud parent of an upcoming 9th grader who attends McKinley Tech High School in Ward 5. And I also serve with Parents Amplifying Voices in Education on the citywide board and Ward 5 parent leaderboards. As a mother of a 14-year-old bright, amazing, rising 9th grader who will attend McKinley Tech High School in the fall, I am super excited about her future at the school and specialized programs, but can I say that about the whole part of her? It was 2016, my daughter was a 3rd grader at Inspired Teaching Demonstration, and I was called that my daughter had a seizure in dance class The staff couldn't give me details because no one in the room knew how to handle the circumstance, and no nurse was on site. This was her first seizure, but earlier the same day, she was tripped by a student in the classroom and was never sent to the nurse because the nurse was not there. So as the day progressed, that caused her to have a seizure. I feel this could have been prevented in so many ways. My daughter had several seizures that week from her head injury, and she was finally diagnosed with epilepsy. Seizures were happening during school hours, and it made me nervous. Personally, I stopped working and went out on DCFMLA and volunteered at the school. I stayed in her class because the nurses were being moved around and around with no full-time nurse and no one else in the school trained in seizures. She had an action plan and medicine in the school nurse suite, but every time they changed nurses, I had to have a conversation because they needed to know who my child was. They were unaware of who unless they looked up in their files. I feel nurses are spread too wide and they're facing burnout. So I feel for both sides. My daughter hasn't had a seizure in the last 3 years, but just 2 weeks ago, she had 4 seizures back to back at home. Thank God school was already out, but now I need to know that my daughter will have a nurse there full-time at her school. I will run to the school to make sure she's okay, but I know as a mom, I still have to work. I know the principal, assistant principal at McKinley Tech are great at what they do, and I know that they will help, but we should have nurses who are trained and certified and knowledgeable in the medical field. And I would love to know that when I drop my daughter off at the school, if she had a seizure, someone would know how long, what time, and make sure she gets her emergency medicine. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, we're going to move to the one round of member questions. Member questions are 3 minutes. A reminder to members, and I guess not a reminder to you all, but a first to you all, that 3 minutes does include the time it takes the member to ask the question and the panelist's response. Representative Chang is online. We are testing out, we have worked very hard as a board. You all do not understand, we have worked very hard to have hybrid capabilities. This will be the first time we are practicing with hybrid capabilities with the members. So for those in the chambers, you see things on the screens. So we do have one member that is online. Fingers crossed that works well, but he will be in the queue also. So I'm going to turn to Director Butler to guide us through the questions.
Good evening. We will start our questions with our student representatives this afternoon. Representative Kelly.
Okay. Hello. Thank you all for your comments. My question is for Ms. Carrington. Do you think a problem with the lack of nurses in schools have to do anything with the wards? Like maybe one ward might get more nurses compared to another. That makes sense.
Thank you for your question. We work really hard alongside DC Health and CSS to receive nurse scheduling and nurse updates. Unfortunately, our agency has no real influence over the assignments of school nurses, but we do know that DC Health and CSS work very diligently to find new strategies to increase health suite coverage, and we receive updates and regularly. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks. And for Ms. Rodriguez, my question is: so how can we improve the communication between schools and families to making sure that nurses are in the loop of problems like are going on in schools?
I guess more of an open dialogue. You know, like in the schools, they have these apps where they talk to the parents. Having something where the nurse can speak, you know, with a parent. I mean, avoiding HIPAA laws, but a way that they can reach out, because a lot of parents are called and they don't answer, and they don't know what's going on. And I feel like every kid's health changes. It doesn't stay the same, and so when you don't have a nurse there, it's unfortunate because they're moving from place to place, and so that child then gets sent home and they're not learning for the rest of the day.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Washington.
Thank you all for your testimony and for coming out tonight. I had two questions. My first question was for everyone on the panel. I was wondering how many AEDs you thought should be present in a single building school. I know DCPS has one per building, but I was wondering if it might be, I guess, easier or more effective if there were like AEDs on each floor, in each classroom, or I don't know. I just wanted to hear you all's thoughts on that.
Can you repeat the last part of that question? Just
Oh.
'cause, I heard the first part, I think, in that.
I was just wondering how many AEDs you thought should be present in like a single building school, because I know DCPS has one per building, but I was wondering if you thought it might be more effective if there were one on each floor, or maybe in each, I don't know, section of the building. Just wondering what you guys' thoughts were on that.
Sure. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. At DCPS, while we do have one AED machine that is required in every school building, some schools do have more than one AED in the building, especially our secondary schools that have pools. So we do look at the structure and the size of the building, and some schools have a little bit more than the minimum requirement, and we're proud of that.
This actually came up in a jurisdiction that I did work for. I don't work for DC, so I do want to defer to DC. But, and I will say that we definitely opted to advocate for additional AEDs based off of number of kids in space, due to the fact that there's a state or requirement by law, and you can meet that. But to your point, sometimes they can be hard to access. And then the other thing was some of our buildings are so big that we needed a quick access. We also advocated to get them very close to the clinic spaces, so that clinic staff could grab the AED, just because sometimes people don't know. Sorry.
Thank you. And then I had one more question. It was for Director Carrington. I know you mentioned that Health Suite staff met with teachers. Oh, sorry, they met with principals. But I was wondering if they did meet with teachers of individual students who have medical plans.
If teachers have questions about their student and their medical action plans, of course, with the approval of the parents, the teachers are allowed to engage with Health Suite staff and to talk. We encourage as many people that is involved in the care of a student to be privy to their information and just what to look out for and how to respond.
Thank you.
Now we will go online to Representative Chang.
Hello, hello. And it's an honor to be the guinea pig tonight to test hybrid. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Director Carrington, thank you for your testimony. Building off of some of the points we heard from Ms. Bell, I'm curious, in our district, do you know how many nursing roles are unfilled currently? And I would love to hear from you what some of the barriers are to filling those positions.
Thank you for your question. Again, as stated in my testimony, we are a participant in DC Health School Health Services Program, so we have no oversight of the assignments of Health Suite staff. DC Health assigns and provides Health Suite staffing across public and public charter schools, but we do receive regular updates in terms of scheduling and where nurses may be assigned, but I would have to defer to DC Health to share more about their staffing model and the number of Health Suite staff there are throughout the district.
And so the current structure is they staff, and what's the right verb then for your role in this? Is it to manage the people that are staffed, or?
We're like a conduit. We support the school. We also engage with DC Health and CSS. We respond to communicable illnesses. We help the school to respond and provide communication and advise on cleaning and so forth. So we don't really, we do also support the schools where needed in attending 504 meetings and attending any space that the school needs to be supported or the student needs to be supported. We're there as a resource. but we don't directly oversee the health suite itself.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Bell, thank you for your testimony. I think I'm curious in 45 seconds. A lot of what you have suggested and recommended makes a lot of sense, and they're long-term solutions. Is there a short-term solution to filling the gap
In school-
of needs?
In school nursing?
Mhm.
Is there a short-term solution? You could look at contract services, but with contractors, it's really hard to keep them for some of the same reasons that I stated. I don't think there's a tomorrow solution. I do think there's like a 3 months, as long as there was collaboration between the groups that needed to
And
collaborate.
the 3 months would be the contract solution, you think, or something?
Yes, and can I?
Thank you.
And also going out to venues where you would find school nurses. I mean, I think, how you advertise is big with school nursing, and where you advertise to, and then are you competitive?
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
I just want to thank you all for your testimony tonight, for coming out. I'll start with Ms. Jenkins. That was very, very impressive testimony you gave, and we've heard stories like that before, but I think you really made the point very well, and that is that we really do need a full-time, 40-hour per week school nurse in every public school and every charter school in DC. That's what students ask for, that's what parents ask for. And I know we have a shortage right now, but I think your personal story just really highlights why that's so important. I've been fortunate to work for former Councilmember Vince Gray in the past, who was the chair of the Health Committee, and he went back and forth with our former health director on this issue because the health director at DC Health felt that allied health professionals were a substitute for school nurses, but parents have made it clear that that is not an acceptable substitute. That's not who they feel safe having in the school with their students. So I just want to thank you for making that point really clear tonight and for your powerful testimony that you gave. I want to go next to Ms. Bell. Thank you for what you articulated about the challenges there. What can we do in DC? I mean, we've wrestled with this thing over and over again. We got to compete with the region in terms of salary. I think we just saw an increase in Prince George's County a bit of time ago, and I don't know whether we've caught up to that. How do our salaries through Children's that then go through DC Health, but with the contract, how do they compare to the region? And what do you hear from students going through Georgetown on kind of why they would either pick DC or not pick DC?
Okay, so I feel like she could probably speak to the first part of that, which was how do the salaries compare?
Okay.
Because I'm a neighboring jurisdiction for my full-time job.
She may punt it to DC Health, but
I am definitely going to punt it to DC Health.
okay. All right. Well, we'll follow back with them. All right. So what do your students say? Like, what would draw them to DC versus encourage them to go someplace else?
Yeah. So I think definitely exposure to school nursing, is huge. Also, so if you can get some type of collaboration between your universities and having them work with school nurses, and then also competitive pay, feeling welcome in the position. Yeah. School nursing has a benefit over hospital nursing in that you can be, you have holidays.
Yeah, absolutely.
12-hour shifts. So there's a lot of ways to sell it.
Yep.
But that would be, yeah.
And you mentioned the burnout, I think in your testimony, which was really powerful because we heard from a lot of school nurses about that with having to float around, how disruptive that is. And, if we could get away from that, I think we might address that quality of life issue that you've highlighted tonight. So thank you for all of your testimony. I really appreciate y'all coming out.
Representative Henderson.
Hi, thank you all. Ms. Jenkins, first to you, congratulations and welcome to McKinley Tech. That's a selective school and you got selected, so you should be proud of that. And to you and your mom both, I'm hopeful that there's some movement on seizure-safe schools. The council held a hearing last week, I think, and hopefully that legislation will move along so that there will be more people in the school that are trained and know how to respond to seizures specifically. I think we all would rather have a full-time nurse in every school, but my understanding from CSS is that they're making the most of a difficult situation given the shortage of nurses, which makes the stats that you shared, Ms. Bell, all the more alarming if we're not even replacing 1 year's worth of the need. So I wanted to ask you, Ms. Bell, first, does Georgetown have any partnerships with DC schools?
Yeah, we have previously, and we're looking forward to developing them. I mean, we were invited to come and speak as, I think, among a number of universities, and we wanted to. So we are open to that relationship, but we do partner with other jurisdictions with school nursing specifically. So we definitely have a pathway for that.
And so maybe to you, Ms. Carrington, who would that link need to be between DC schools and the area universities who are training nurses?
We can start here.
Okay.
Like,
I hope you'll talk. Yeah.
We'll start here.
Please do. The more of those partnerships we can have, the better, because we also are interested in pathways for our students. So working on that from both directions would be really helpful. One last question for Ms. Bell. The previous question got to kind of why choose DC, and you started getting into this, but why would students choose school nursing as opposed to hospital nursing? I think I've talked to several nurses in a hospital setting who said, well, the pay is much better here.
Correct. So I don't want to reiterate again, but you do have to be pay conscious. But in addition to that, the work-life balance, the being able to be home after school with their kids is a big attractor sometimes to school nursing, and love for like taking care of children and improving outcomes. It also tends to be an area of nursing that can be, for lack of a better word, happier than other types of nursing. So I think that's good, and also when you want to see long-term outcomes for populations and individuals, it can also be an attractor.
Is the pay typically lower for school-based nurses than hospital-based?
Yes, and that was my statistic,
Okay.
Considerably lower.
All right, thank you.
Representative O'Leary.
Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Rodriguez, I want to thank you for your testimony. Unfortunately, it's not the first time we've heard this. That's why we have this panel, because this is an emergency for the city, which is an unrecognized emergency. It doesn't do any good to those students in schools who don't have a nurse on site when they have a medical emergency to know that, well, we have a nurse at another school, but they can make it there, all right? We're just one student dying away from this to be an embarrassment to the city. I have a couple of, that's my soapbox, because this needs to be fixed right now by the DC government. It doesn't need to come up again. Question is, who assigns the school nurses for DCPS? Is it DCPS assigns the school nurses?
No, we have no oversight of the assignments. We receive biweekly schedules through the Department of Health and through CSS.
No, I know, I appreciate your saying, I mean, you said that already.
Absolutely.
But who assigns the nurses to the schools in their little group?
Children's school services, they assign them based on reviewing the students' records and their health records and determining which health suite staff may be the best fit for the student population, is my understanding.
Because we have several secondary schools that have nurses' offices on site, all right? I know Cardozo does, all right? But that doesn't take care of all of the other elementary and middle schools and high schools that don't have a clinic on site or things like that. All right, here's a question that, and I'm not talking away from the two of you, but the people that know more about this than I do. If each school had a slot for a school nurse, if it was mandated that every single public school and public charter school in the city had to have a nurse on site, could we fill those slots?
I'm unsure, I can't speak to that, but I do align with my co-panelist about, just reiterating the shortage of school nurses, or just nursing in general. There's a shortage across, so that could have just a huge impact on just still being able to fill the slots, even if they are available. But that is something that I know that DC Health and CSS will be able to look deeper into.
Thank you. And Ms. Bell, we only have 10 minutes, but give me a number that would be a competitive salary for a nurse in a school starting. Just give me a number. You got 4 seconds.
70 to 80,000.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Vice President Patterson.
Thank you. I want to start with Ms. Jenkins. First and foremost, thank you for your powerful testimony. I believe I saw your name on the list that applied for the Student Advisory Council. So this goes a long way in understanding why you want to be on the student advocacy, and thank you so much for wanting to be that advocate on Advisory Council. So thank you for your testimony. Ms. Rodriguez, we know each other. We've worked together on issues concerning your daughter. I just want to thank you for your consistent advocacy, not only for your daughter, but across the city. I know you're a PAVE parent. I know you're out across the city, not only in your home ward and everything, but across the city, and I really appreciate that aspect of you of being that parent and advocating so much for our students. I look forward to working with you even more, since we talk on a regular basis, but I look forward to working with you more. I want to turn my question that I have to Ms. Carrington. And it seems like, and you're looking like everybody has a question for me, like you're on the hot seat. And I don't think this is going to be a bad one. I just want to get a little bit better understanding. When we're talking about training, and through the collective bargaining agreement, you said DCPS cannot require staff to complete this training, and you said you were kind of happy about that. Can you expound on that a little bit?
I'm happy about the volunteers.
The volunteers.
Who are, yes.
Okay.
So the administration of medication training is a training that's offered to staff members to be able to administer the medication in the event that a health suite staff is not available. Maybe they're attending to another emergency or, in the building. But that allows that staff member to step in and respond. And so because it's not a paid position and because we, under the collective bargaining agreement, we cannot mandate that they take the training, we are just super happy and honored that those stepped up to the call.
Right. And I just want to understand that that collective bargaining agreement part. So that's just something that I guess teachers, or is that with that collective bargaining agreement is with, the training aspect of it, the union.
The training aspect is owned by the Department of Health, and CSS leads the training. Our team signs up staff members for the training, sends reminders to them, and we just encourage staff to sign up and help walk them through the course.
But what group made it not a requirement?
I will have to get back to you on that, so we'll circle back on that one.
Okay. All right. I look forward to you getting back with me.
Absolutely.
That's my question.
President Thompson.
So I do not forget, I do want to thank Representatives Washington and O'Leary for making sure this panel happened this evening. This would not have happened if they did not raise the need for it. And so I want to just thank them and thank you all for your testimony. I actually had a similar question about the collective bargain, and my question was like, well, which agreement? Because it's not like DCPS has one collective bargaining, and so I was like, is it all the agreements or what? So I would like to know that.
We'll dig a little deeper.
Thank you. And then I'm curious, when we talk about one nurse per school, is there some type of best practice ratio like they have for counselors, where it's like this many students per nurse?
Yes, so there's both. NASN and I think CDC both say one nurse per school. There's also, and I don't remember the source, but there's literature like 1 per 750.
Okay.
That type of thing as well. So there is definitely recommended
Staffing level.
ratios.
I'm curious for two reasons. One is just given our sharing. And so like how many students does that mean a nurse is seeing if it's like this school has 200 kids, this school has 500 kids, right? So I'm curious how those things go together, and just the fact that our schools vary in size so much. Like in Ward 7, I have a school with less than 50 kids, and then I have schools with 600 kids.
Exactly, so you might have to consider other items, and so some of the things like that I consider, and my other job is, you know, is it a Title I school? How many kids have health conditions in this school? What type of services do those health conditions require?
So this gets me to my next question.
Okay.
When I have testified before the council about this, it's come up that there are different populations that schools have. A lot of my schools have a lot of kids with eczema, allergies, asthma, just due to environmental conditions. But I still have schools that are Title I and have those conditions and are being told that's still not enough for you to have a full-time nurse, you need a tech. It does not seem to be, and so this is probably more of a comment than a question, it does not seem to me to be, as a very engaged member of the public, transparent. Like, what is it that qualifies for you to say, yes, these are the types of conditions that would necessitate a school nurse being on campus, and then maybe you all have a lot of kids who are sick a lot and might actually live in a desert where it comes to health services, but you don't qualify. And so we hear that a lot. I don't know if you have a response to that, but.
No, I just want to say that this is why we just try to really stress the importance of families turning in the required health forms like the Universal Health Certificate, and why we really work very hard to message that out and engage with families about the importance, because the more that DC Health and children know about the landscape of the school and their health conditions, then that can continue to influence staffing.
I appreciate that. I am well over my time, so thank you all. I do encourage members and others to follow up with the panelists. I encourage the panelists to follow up with each other. I have some questions around how, like, school nursing in the other jurisdictions and the students, like student nurses, work, and so happy to talk with you about that. But I want to thank you all. So you all are welcome to leave the table. I am now going to shift us a little bit in the agenda because we do have interim Superintendent Mitchell here. And so I'm going to ask her actually to approach the dais.
Thank you so much. So thank you, President Thompson, Vice President Patterson, and members of the State Board of Education. I am Antoinette Mitchell, and it is my distinct honor to address the board and the public this evening as Interim State Superintendent of Education for the District of Columbia. I thank Mayor Bowser for this opportunity and Deputy Mayor Kind for his partnership, and the OSSE team for their trust, support, and continued diligence on behalf of the students and families of the District of Columbia. Tonight, I would like to share a little bit about my story and my priorities for the coming months. As a little girl growing up in DC, I remember my mom bringing me to DC Board of Education meetings. I never dreamed that I would one day speak to the State Board of Education as the Interim State Superintendent of Education as I am today. This is a full circle moment for me, and as I look back, so much of my life has prepared me to be here with you today in this capacity. I had a wonderful experience in DC public schools. I attended Bancroft Elementary School, where I remember every one of my teachers from kindergarten through the 6th grade with great fondness. I learned foundational skills in reading and math, as well as how to process emotions and get along with other kids. I rode a chartered bus to Deal Junior High School, where I had great teachers, and especially in science. I had the opportunity to participate in interdisciplinary social studies and English classes in 8th grade and in 9th grade. Those courses, taught by Mrs. Miles and Mrs. Medley in 8th grade and by Mrs. Fort and Mrs. Cianelli in 9th grade, provided a strong foundation in the humanities, sparking an interest that has lasted a lifetime. I attended Wilson High School, now Jackson Reed, where I took the courses necessary to meet graduation requirements, as well as AP English, which prepared me for college, and French, which got me out of trouble when I later traveled to Sierra Leone without the requisite passport documents. I also edited the yearbook, got the opportunity to run the student talent show, and I learned to play tennis. Later, as a teacher at Hine Junior High School, I came to understand the important role that a strong administrator plays in setting school culture and being a great instructional leader. I experienced the best of what DCPS had to offer, and it has paid dividends over and over again. For the past 10 years, as OSSI's Assistant Superintendent of the Division of Post-Secondary and Career Education, it has been my work and my passion to help all students, DCPS and charter, also experience the best education that public schools have to offer. Now, as OSSI's leader, I'm very excited to build upon these experiences and continue to learn more in furtherance of expanding educational opportunities for all district learners. Thankfully, I do not have to begin from scratch. I will build upon the tremendous progress made under Dr. Grant and her predecessors with an eye towards stability and continuous progress. Under my leadership, I will keep the current strategic plan initiatives on track and moving forward. OSSI plays an important, though behind-the-scenes role in preparing schools and local education agencies for the start of school. On the immediate horizon, I want to ensure that we have a strong start to the 2024-25 school year, and I have identified critical priorities to meeting this goal that fall within 3 big buckets. 1, serving all students. 2, focusing on academics. And 3, improving operations and data. Through these priorities, OSSI seeks to provide local education agencies the support they need to build upon the progress made in the 23-24 school year and continue to move the district from recovery to restoration and beyond. I want to take a quick moment to highlight some of the important work happening at OSSI right now to create the enabling conditions that for our schools to start the year strong. We are preparing educators to teach new standards in social studies, social emotional learning, and financial literacy. We are supporting LEAs submitting their transportation request forms for each student in preparation for bus routes, increasing route capacity, and expanding programs that support parents in getting students to school. We are getting students registered for the Advanced Technical Center and the Advanced Internship Program, as well as conducting professional development for CTE teachers across the city. We are working with LEAs on data feeds so that we can certify enrollment, receive attendance data, and meet federal requirements for students with disabilities. We are developing a results-oriented school improvement plan that will better define OSSI's role in addressing the needs of our schools that require more support and enable these and other schools to provide a rich menu of options that our students certainly deserve. And finally, we are continuing to provide DC Tag, DC Futures, and Mayor Scholars Awards to DC residents pursuing post-secondary education. And to everyone listening, please remember that applications are open until September 6th this year, and FAFSA supports are available as well. As I look forward to OSSI's future work with the board, I am thrilled that we will soon begin reimagining the district's high school graduation requirements. I will attend the board's August working session to present a draft of the district-wide graduate profile. The graduate profile aims to articulate a vision for college and career-ready capabilities all DC students should attain in advance of graduation, and it will be used to reimagine how DC students are prepared to face a rapidly changing and interconnected world. I look forward to working with each of you as we embark upon this important and exciting journey together. It is my understanding that the student representatives are cycling off the board. I didn't have the opportunity to work with you, but I hear wonderful things, and I'm so thankful for the work that you've done in your role here. I believe that we are strongest and best prepared to make progress when we are unified behind data-informed practices, and I look so forward to partnering with the State Board to help drive community engagement and consensus building. Thank you for your continued commitment to DC's learners and for your time and attention this evening. I am excited about the journey ahead and further expanding opportunities for all of the little boys and girls growing up in DC like I once did. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you again, Interim Superintendent Mitchell, for joining us. I will say, student members, we are going to celebrate you all a little bit later, but she's heard good things because we have said them, and we will continue to say them. And so we look forward to seeing you at our working session in August.
Thank you so much.
Getting us back on track, this is now the time where we typically take a 5-minute break. It is 6:28. I'm going to extend some grace and say 6:29. We will reconvene for public witnesses at 6:34. Thank you.
ma'am. I'm still going to the doctor. I had an appointment on Monday. I had one this morning.
Are you better today than you were yesterday? Have you been better every day?
Not every day, but some days. Every day's a stretch.
You got to be careful. I've had a couple of events with my lower back in my life because I lifted something wrong. So you just gotta be careful about lifting. Plus that's really hard because you've got
Yes, thank God she's petite. That's the best thing.
Members, I'm looking for you all to come back to the dais because the break is over. So we're going to keep it moving. All right. We hear testimony from public witnesses at every public meeting. Your comments become part of our official record. If you would like to speak at a future public meeting, please sign up on our website at sboe.dc.gov or contact our staff by email at sboe@dc.gov or by phone at 202-741-0888. Tonight, we have 21 people who submitted public testimony. We will hear from those in attendance in a panel format. Each witness will have up to 3 minutes to provide comments. Please note that you must use one of the microphones at the table, which are already on. The timer light on the table will be green for the first 2.5 minutes, yellow for the last 30 seconds, and red after the 3 minutes have lapsed. After our public witnesses speak, we will pause for questions from board members. Members will have 3 minutes for questions for our public witnesses. Those 3 minutes include their question or comment and the answer. Director Butler will call the public witnesses in groups and announce the question rounds. She will also assist with timing to ensure our witnesses and board members stay within their allotted time. Director Butler, you may ask witnesses to come to the table. I did. Okay.
Thank you. Felix Rice, Darius Wagner, Ethan Henshaw, Justin English, Ali Goudian, Maya Farron, I thought it was 5. Okay. My apologies. We were supposed to only call 4. Maya, you will be in the next group. Or you can come right on up now, Maya. We will start here on the end, ma'am, with you. Go ahead.
Hi all, I am Allie, a Georgetown University junior and Ward 2 resident. This summer I have been working in educational equity, focusing on the DC public education system. Living in and loving this city and the university I attend brings me here tonight to advocate for the end of legacy admissions. This summer I have spoken with members of the DC Council, education nonprofits, DCPS, and more about what the educational landscape in DC looks like for kids in public schools. What I continue to hear over and over is how the way things are set up continues to hurt the marginalized kids of this city. Just last week, I was at McFarland Middle School in Ward 4, where English learners, 10 to 12-year-old kids who can only speak Spanish, were trying to learn to read. When these kids enter high school in 9th grade, only 53% of them and their fellow English learners will graduate with even the chance of attending college. Only 80% of their graduating class will complete a post-secondary degree within 6 years of high school graduation. These are the kinds of kids that will be and are harmed by legacy admissions practices. On the other hand, DC universities like Georgetown are receiving hundreds of millions of dollars from DC taxpayers to serve the white, wealthy students who are lucky enough to attend these institutions. These students from the top 1% are 2.7 times more likely to attend Georgetown than an average income student with the same test scores. Thus, an average DC student who can beat the odds and become one of the few to graduate from their neighborhood or charter school struggles again against an admission system that favors legacy admits. Georgetown itself only has 1.5% of its student population coming from DC, and a majority of those attend private schools, such as Georgetown Visitation and Prep, again continue to advantage kids whose path to graduate high school is already set. Schools that exist in and benefit from the city of DC can thus thrive and prosper, while many kids in the wards will not even be able to see or imagine what graduating high school, let alone college, is like. This puts the onus on DC to make a change and attempt to make this system more equitable for future public school graduates who want to attend schools like Georgetown. Additionally, as someone who comes from a background of wealth and privilege, college has always been in the cards for me. I've dreamed of living in DC and changing the world since I was a little girl. But when I look around at my classes, clubs, and dining hall, all I see are people who look just like me, coming from backgrounds just like mine. This is representative of one of the biggest impacts of donor and legacy admissions, a deeply homogeneous student population. Especially with the knockdown of affirmative action, schools' percentages of minorities are rapidly dropping, and a black student from DC, if they attended Georgetown, along with the other black students, would be outnumbered by the amount of legacy admits. Think about that. They will be going from classrooms full of kids that look just like them to classrooms filled with white, wealthy legacy admits. Especially considering that the diversity of Georgetown has not increased in over 20 years, with 10% of every incoming class being reserved for legacy students, it makes it less likely for that DC resident to have the chance to attend and be able to find community and succeed in this environment. I know I still have a lot to learn from the DC community, more than a summer, 2 years, or a lifetime could teach me, but I do know this. The kids here are being affected by this, the kids at McFarland and the few ELL 9th graders who will graduate high school. We must take action to end legacy admissions to give the kids of the city a fair shot at higher education. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
And we're just gonna move straight down the line.
President Thompson, Vice President Patterson, and distinguished board members. My name is Justin Dean English, and on May 18th of this year, I became the first person in my family to graduate college, earning a Bachelor of Arts in Government from Georgetown University. I grew up in Texas, in the town of Mesquite, just east of Dallas. I attended a public elementary school, a public middle school, and a public high school. That was my only option while living in poverty with a single mother raising 2 children. During college, I spent my spring breaks in my dorm, having no money to travel, even to go back home. I constantly worried if I couldn't afford an emergency expense. My mother was evicted during my junior year. Thanks to Georgetown, I have the credentials to help lift my family out of poverty. For that, I will forever be grateful. Very few Georgetown students have seen the world from my vantage point. One moment from my undergraduate experience that I still think about 2 years later took place in a course on educational politics, dedicated to understanding the challenges low-income students in public schools face. The professor asked, whose parents graduated from college? I remember feeling my face flush as I was one of 3 students who did not raise their hand. It should be noted that legacy admissions preferences, by definition, take away spots from those who have become first-generation students. This point especially matters for the district, where there is a persistent gap in higher education attainment between white and minority residents. Census Bureau data finds that 92% of white-only district residents had a bachelor's degree or higher. For Hispanics and Latino residents, 65%. For Black residents, 35%. Legacy and donor preference automatically excludes more Black and Brown district residents than white residents. The next two questions the professor asked stood out as well. Who attended a private high school? Whose families paid for cleaning services at their home? A majority of students' hands bolted upwards. 60% of Georgetown students are from the top 10% of earners, with 20% representing the top 1%. In contrast, I was part of just 3% of students from the bottom 20%. The lesson I took away that day is that a lack of diversity creates less effective learning environments. If the people most passionate about improving our public schools first learn about life in poverty from a PowerPoint rather than their peers, is it truly a quality learning environment? I ask the board to consider if legacy and donor preference is sustainable. Generations of opportunity for the district is at stake. You have the ability and mandate from 70% of district residents to help level the playing field. Thank you.
Board members, Vice President Patterson, President Thompson, and most importantly, DC residents, good evening. My name is Darius Wagner, and I'm a Black first-gen student here in DC at Georgetown University. Today, the board will take a critical vote on the future of students who come from a background just like mine. Students whose talent and gifts are often overlooked and disregarded because of their zip code, family income, or simply because they were not born into a family where their parents attended elite universities. In 2022, the Supreme Court, ignoring decades of precedent, ruled affirmative action unconstitutional. Member Best framed it best by condemning the practice in an earlier hearing, saying the hypocrisy of eliminating affirmative action while continuing to keep other forms of affirmative action, because we don't often call legacy preference or donor preference affirmative action, but it is. In the face of this, we must do all that we can do to protect and increase the diversity of our nation's higher education institutions, and one of the most consequential things we can do is end legacy admissions. And let me level to you about the direness of the situation here in DC. Even before this ruling, there were fewer Black students at Georgetown in 2022 than in 2001. At GW, the Black student population has only grown 2% in the past 20 years, from 5 to 7%. At Georgetown, there are more legacy students than Black and Hispanic students respectively, and going further, there are more students from the top 1% than the bottom 60%. Ending legacy is not the end-all solution, but it's a big step forward, so follow the data with me. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found if legacy was ended at Harvard University, the population of Black, Asian, and Hispanic students, at their most conservative estimate, will grow 4 to 5% respectively. When Johns Hopkins ended legacy admission, its population of underrepresented students soared from 18% to 34%. And so let us continue to follow the data, and let me state plainly, clearly, and with conviction. Legacy admission does not serve Black, brown, and low-income students. When this issue was studied at Harvard, they found that while 20% of white students benefited from legacy admissions, only 5% of Black students and 4% of Hispanic students did. Additionally, Forbes reports that selective four-year institutions that do not consider legacy status have a significantly larger portion of students who are Black, Hispanic, and from a lower income background. We cannot find any data anywhere that suggests that preserving legacy is good for diversity. If legacy admissions continues to prevent students from underrepresented communities from getting a seat at the table, how can we possibly conclude that they and their children will benefit from legacy admissions? And if it had been the case that legacy admissions does miraculously benefit students from underrepresented backgrounds, then why are groups like the NAACP, ACLU, Thurgood Marshall Fund, and the National College Attainment Network also calling for an end to legacy? If legacy helped the people of DC, then why are people like Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton and DC Chairman Charles Wilson supporting our efforts? I implore you to vote yes on Senate Resolution 16. Your constituents are watching. 70% of them know legacy is bad. Thank you, and I eagerly await your questions.
Members of the board, thank y'all for having us today. My name is Felix Rice. I'm a rising junior at Georgetown University, a federal Pell Grant recipient, and a very proud product of public schools. I'm also one of the students leading our campaign for admissions at Georgetown, and I'm here today very strongly in favor of SR 2416. I can sit here and give you statistics that more Georgetown students come from the top 1% than the bottom 60, that we're ranked among the lowest nationally admittance of Pell Grant recipients like me. What I can also tell you is that someone who's experienced that divide is that the result behind that statistics is a campus where students from low income, lower middle class, and minority backgrounds feel left out, marginalized, and invisible. When I got here, I was very well aware of the reputation of wealth and elitism at Georgetown. It's why, even though I was incredibly lucky to go to excellent public schools, have a family that prioritized my education, I never doubted I'd go to college somewhere, I worried that I wasn't going to be smart enough to keep up with my new peers, and I felt like I might have just kind of slipped in by mistake. But what I found is that none of my new classmates are any smarter than me or anyone I went to public school with. They've just got more money and they've had better opportunities and better education, and stats will back that up. That's why wealthy students are more likely to get in based on any other objective measure of merit. Legacy admissions is a big part of that, and that makes me very angry, and I think it should make all of you angry too. I remind myself all the time not to take this opportunity for granted. I'm 19 years old. I've met cabinet secretaries, governors, former presidents. I've spoken to alumni in any field I could possibly dream of entering. I've watched doors to jobs and funding open to me because of the name on my transcript. I'm going to do whatever I want in the world, and Georgetown's a big part of that because they decided to give me a shot. I have a friend that graduated last year. He's 21 years old and making 6 figures. That shot's going to change my life. I feel the weight of that every single day and a responsibility to use it to make sure that I do everything I can to make sure that more kids get their shot, regardless of who they are, how much they can pay. That's what I want my legacy to be. And I want to implore all of you to think about yours as well and who you want to use your power to fight for. Don't get me wrong, I want to build an generational wealth that I can pass along to my kids, and I hope they have the opportunity to attend any university they want, including Georgetown, but I hope that I won't be selfish enough to believe that that should include them receiving advantages directly at the detriment of kids who will overcome challenges that they won't. I can see I'm getting towards the end of my time, so I'm going to conclude with something that I know everybody here knows already, which is that educational inequality in this country doesn't begin when you apply to college. It starts before you're born. We're not going to fix that with this issue. I'm not under that illusion, but it's a step in the right direction. It's going to change the lives of real kids, and it's going to change the course of families for generations. Students who have achieved without the advantages of wealthy and well-connected legacy peers like SAT tutors, college counselors, private school educations, niche extracurriculars bankrolled by parents, students who have achieved with even less than the standard high-quality public education that we promise every child in this country but far too often fail to provide, students who have objectively just made more with less just to have the shot to knock at the door of an elite institution don't deserve to have it slammed in their faces because they lack the connections and capital that have already put their peers in advantage from the start. We can do something about that if we fight for it, and that's what I'm asking all of you to join us in doing today. So thank you for your time, and thank you in advance for your support.
Good evening. Thank you for having me and hearing my testimony. My name is Maya Farron. I am from the village of Wellington, Ohio, though I currently reside in Ward 3 and plan on being an official DC resident in the future. I am a proud student at Georgetown. I'm here today to speak against legacy admissions because equity in education is close to my heart. I am a first-generation low-income college student from a rural community where many in my village know that the public school system that I went through is struggling and unsustainable like so many in the country, including right here in DC. So how did I get to Georgetown if it was that bad? Well, I can tell you it was not like the path of my legacy or donor admit peers at all, or even the path of my peers who simply came from wealthier families. Starting in 8th grade, I relied on the backing of a very large and prestigious scholarship foundation for low-income students like me, meaning it took thousands of dollars of scholarship money for 4 years to fund things like summer programs, extracurriculars, college visits, college counseling, essay counseling, standardized test prep, the MacBook I wrote this on, and even now they're funding whatever I need in college in my summers. The idea was to give me access to everything that a wealthy student had access to so I could go to the school of my dreams. But my story isn't supposed to illustrate the generosity of these foundations, but rather the fact that since I had my heart set on Georgetown with my background, I had to be extraordinary. I had to put forward 1,000% more effort to distinguish myself because my parents couldn't write a check to a tutor, or even worse, simply because I could not check the box on my application that said I have a parent or relative that went to Georgetown. Approximately 10% of seats in the admitted classes at Georgetown are reserved for the overwhelmingly white and wealthy legacy students. So this mentality is not imagined even, it is reality. It is backed by numbers and data even further. For example, there are more students at Georgetown from the top 1%, which is represented by 20% of the student body, than the bottom 60%, which is represented by 14% of the student body, which you heard many times tonight. And that's just one statistic. And that only illustrates the lack of socioeconomic diversity, not the lack of racial and ethnic diversity DC universities like Georgetown and GW suffer from. There are more legacy students at Georgetown than black students, and that's the same case for Hispanic students as well. The data, in fact, overwhelmingly backs up my position. Not only that, your constituents agree with me. 70% of DC residents support ending legacy admissions, and in your role, that should be the key point you consider here. Ending legacy admissions is not going to solve everything about inequity in higher education, but it's not only a good step in the right direction, it is a crucial one. I want to end here today by saying, despite my criticisms of my school's admission practices, there's a reason why I and so many students like me did not just throw in the towel and attend more diverse and less posh schools, because an education like a Georgetown one is life-changing for people of my background. I will never forget my mother's tears when I got into Georgetown. She had seen poverty and starvation and everything, and now her daughter was going to get to go to Georgetown. Nor my elderly father, who worked all his life, is still working and will never get to retire. He gleefully said that I will be able to rise above my social status, and he was so grateful. Please consider voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your testimony. We will now go for a round of member questions, starting with our student members. Representative Kelly.
Thank you all for your testimonies. I loved all your perspectives and opinions. My only question is, what role, if any, should alumni play in the admissions process with legacies being banned?
Well, that's a great question. Well, alumni should, I mean, they're going to be around. They're going to have ties to the school. I think one of our main priorities, what's in this bill, increasing transparency, banning universities from even knowing an applicant's, knowing whether an applicant's parents went to Georgetown is important. So they'll be around, but primarily they won't be around for the fact that they will decide whether or not like a student can or cannot attend a university.
Can I add to that? I would also say that one of the arguments we hear a lot about the relationship between alumni and a school and like the relationship between ending legacy missions is that if we get rid of legacy missions, alumni will stop donating, and that will decrease financial aid. And we've met with a lot of admin at Georgetown, and one thing that like the vice president of the university told us is that that's not actually a reason they're keeping it. That's not one of their concerns. They expect alumni to continue donating. I know I can speak for myself that when I'm in a position able to do so, I'm going to, because I know what kind of like transformation that this kind of education can provide for your life, and I want to donate to financial aid. But yeah, and also, you know, there's still going to be legacy students without legacy preference, right? There's still going to be people whose kids apply and send their kids here because they love the school and their kids love the school, and they're going to get in. They're just going to get in on their own merits. So we fully expect alumni to continue to maintain a relationship with the university with their without, you know, the extra boost to some of their children.
Thank you for bringing up that point. Thanks.
Representative Washington.
Hi, thank y'all for coming out to testify. I don't have any questions, but I did want to say thank you. It was nice hearing y'all's testimony, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Goulet.
I want to thank you all for coming out. I mean, this is such an inspirational panel here. I mean, it really, anybody who watches this has got to be hopeful for just that humanity will work itself out here. I mean, you're all inspirations, powerful stories. You know, some of you coming from different ends of the economic spectrum, but all uniting for really this important purpose. And I want to thank you for bringing this issue to us, you know, for inspiring us to move it forward, and then now coming in again today to just tell compelling stories. And I think we need change on this. I mean, you look at D.C. is a tale of two cities still. I mean, very much divided based on income, equating to, you know, a racial divide in the city, east versus west. I mean, unemployment right now, you know, over the last years has ranged between 9.6 to 13% for African American communities in the city. For white residents, it's between 1.4 and 2.4%. I mean, it's a stark difference. Household income, you know, just under 50,000 for black families in the city, just under 150,000 for white families. Poverty rate for children growing up in D.C., 35.8% for black children, white children 1.3%. I mean, it's the opportunity gap in D.C. is stark. We've got to close that, and having a tool to really preserve the status quo is something we need to abolish. And I want to thank you all for coming in. You know, and to be clear, we're not even fully abolishing it in this resolution, but we are demanding that if universities want to retain the ability to consider legacy preference in their admissions, that they've got to do better in terms of reaching out and bringing in more students who, in this case, we use the word Pell eligible, who are eligible for Pell grants, so we can bring in students from lower income, diverse backgrounds, and really bring racial and economic equity to higher education here. I mean, right now you look at it, in DC, Gallaudet, Howard, and UDC would be already exempt from this. They're doing between 41 and 60% Pell Grants, so they can continue a legacy preference if they want because they're bringing in a diverse student body. But then we have other schools in the city. I got American right now 18%, Catholic 12%, GW 15%, and Georgetown around 10.4%. And that data may fluctuate from year to year, but that's the best available that I could find, and all of that's well under the national average of between 32 to 33% Pell Grants. So we really need our universities to do better. There's no reason why we need a tool to maintain the status quo when we got rid of affirmative action allegedly based on just considering merit. So I don't really have questions for you. You did such a great job with your testimony. You're an inspiration, and I just want to thank you for this. And I know you're going to go get this done at the DC Council too, so we can get this. So I just thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Representative Henderson?
Thank you all for your testimony. I don't have any questions, but I do want to say I appreciate the fact that I think all of you acknowledge that this is just one small part of an apparatus that perpetuates privilege and disadvantages other students. So I would just invite you to keep advocating against those other oppressive systems. Thank you.
Representative O'Leary?
I've been teaching at the University of the District of Columbia for over 40 years, and the population has gone down dramatically in the last 40 years. So there isn't any legacy admission to UDC since the regulations have gone up. I have a question, and it's really, I know that we have a large group of students that are going to have similar but different testimonies. But the question I have is, besides alumni donations, how does a legacy admission help a university?
Well, that's a great question.
Oh, thank you.
I can tell you what are some of the myths around what some people say. Some people say, oh, because a student has a legacy background, they'll be more qualified, better off at attending a university like these, and those are categorically false. We don't see that behavior. I think this goes back to our central point. A legacy student should be judged just like every other student because all students have an equal ability to contribute to our school.
But besides the donations, does a legacy candidate do anything to help the university except be a student there?
They usually pay full price. Like, it's a proxy for wealth. So if you're looking at an application, you're an application reader, and it's legacy, you're telling you that kid's probably rich or has a lot of money enough to pay a good price. So that helps them admit rich kids. It's kind of like a backwards, sort of way to know who the low-income students are, because they're supposed to be need blind. So that's a way that helps them. It doesn't work in favor of diversity at all.
I mean, because now, let's say in 20 years, your son or your daughter wants to go to Georgetown, and they still have legacy admissions, and it'll help them get into Georgetown after your great experience. All right. I'm not a legacy person. I have 5 children. 4 of them graduated college, and none of them graduated at the college I went to. I think that it's, I'm totally against legacy admissions. And I want, and this is for everybody that comes, because I'm not going to ask any more questions. But I want you to make sure when you come up here, the rest of you, that you never forget the testimony that you are giving to us today, and that you live by that testimony.
Representative Chang?
Good evening, everybody, and to the students who testified, thank you. I'm the member who's the guinea pig tonight, testing that our hybrid version of the meeting works. So I apologize, I'm not there in person with you. I have a question for any of the five of you, which is tactical. One of the things that I've been thinking about, if this passes, is how it's ever and actually enforced. And I'm wondering, in the research that you've done in other jurisdictions where this has happened already, how do we actually follow through to make sure that what we're discussing today is actually implemented with fidelity?
Thank you for the question. So many components of the FAIR Act. One of the components that we're most excited about is the transparency measures. This is requiring universities to be much more transparent about the numbers of the students they're admitting. Also, relating to, there was also one case with UVA, University of Virginia, where they were able to sort of preserve legacy by asking a question on an application to try to go around the question, similar to how, And so basically the main point of that is our bill sort of exempts a university from being able to know the status of whether their parent attended, whether that applicant's parents attended the university.
With that example, just to draw it out.
Yeah.
So who followed through there to check them?
I believe, well, also the state of Virginia has also publicly banned legacy as well. So I'm not sure at the moment who fully followed through, but I believe our bill also has more transparencies, and it will also cost the universities if they were trying to go around circles from being able to do business with DC. And I believe an institution at Georgetown knows the benefit that it receives from the DC City Council than trying to sort of go around their laws and regulations that are passed by its elected citizens.
And I'm asking these questions not necessarily assuming that you know, but one question, if you do know, is what is the benefit that a school like Georgetown gets from DC right now?
Hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know the exact number. I think it's around 300.
Yeah.
It's in grants, it's in tax breaks, it's in, or like tax exemptions, they get permits. So they basically would not be able to operate without the benefits they get from DC. So I can't speak to obviously what Georgetown's going to do, but I can't imagine anyone would want to risk that. They're not going to be able to operate if they don't.
Thank you.
Vice President Patterson.
Thank you. And I want to make sure I say your name. Ms. Farron? Okay, thank you. I appreciate everybody's statements. They're powerful, they're emotional, and I think you are on the right course. Yours particularly spoke to me because of my parents. My parents are and 8th grade students. They did not finish high school, so I would have never qualified for a legacy preference or anything like that. They never earned enough money to give to a university. They didn't graduate high school. I was the first in my family to attend high school. So when I think about legacy, it's a very emotional thing for me, both from my parents' standpoint, but I also have a daughter that got to attend Spelman. And she didn't get a legacy either, but they have legacy there. And I know what her experience was like dealing with students who also had legacy preference and how that can be and how it plays out on a campus, so to speak. So equity work, as I think about this, is really hard. It's really, really, really hard work when we talk about equity. People like to throw the word around until it affects them. Now, and I say that because I have a Georgetown degree now. I have a master's from there. I have a doctorate from American University. I also attended George Washington. So this would affect me and my children. I have 2 children that are now matriculating through school in DCPS schools. So I still believe that this is the right course to go, even though my kids would benefit from legacy preference. It's just important to level the playing field. It's just that important when we're talking about families who are first generations like you guys are speaking about. It's that important. And it may just be a few seats here and there, but that 10, that 18% or whatever the percentages at certain schools is, it matters. My day job is at KIPP DC, and we had a gentleman, he's the first to graduate in his class, and he's going to Georgetown. He didn't get a legacy either. We are so proud of him. We are so proud of him. But there are students that qualify just like he did. He is the only one we have of all 7,300 students. He is the only one that got in Georgetown from KIPP DC. 7,300 students, okay? And so it's important that we also have other students that probably are just as smart as he is, probably just as deserving as he is. I look forward to supporting this because I like to level the playing field. Even when equity affects me or my family, I want to make sure that we're leveling the playing field for everyone. So thank you for your powerful statements. I probably will not ask any questions of any other panelists that come up, but I wanted to make sure people understood why I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
President Thompson?
I'm not sure I have questions. I more so have, I'm a pretty honest broker, like completely honest. I have been pretty transparent in my struggle with this. I am a native Washingtonian. I did attend an Ivy League school. I was also a Pell Grant student, like many of you. Well, maybe not many of you, because I think maybe 2 or 3 of you said you were Pell Grant students. The things that helped me even have that opportunity aren't addressed by this. Like, I'm in a lot of spaces where folks say to my face that nobody is from DC. And the other people who are in those spaces are black people, very few black people, but black people who have been able to amass some amount of privilege for themselves. And I am very seriously struggling what it looks like when you have wealthy white people who have been able to amass not just privilege, but everything else over generations of generations of generations of generations. And then as you start to get people who now could benefit, that are black and that are brown and that are first generation college students and all these things, you say to them, you can't use that to build your family or your community. I have a very close friend, we graduated from the C school together, who went to Georgetown, who struggled mightily. And when I say mightily at Georgetown, I don't mean necessarily academically. I mean literally, like, started to just question his existence as a person. I know so many people who not are in my generation or are in, like, when I think of like my fiance, his dad was one of the first med school graduates at UVA as a black person. And what he went through to be able to not just say that, but how much of that, his identity that has shaped decades and decades later. And so I tend to grapple with, this won't change the fact that not enough of our kids graduate from high school. This won't change the fact that even if you graduate from high school and get into a very expensive college, period, that somebody still got to pay for it. But I am questioning, like, the idea that it's only white people and it's only the most privileged that currently benefit from this. No, but because the time is up, I'm sorry.
Thank you all for your public testimony this evening. We will call our next set of public witnesses. John Plummer, Eleanor Sims, William Meade, Michelle Ramos, Elizabeth Mitchell, Sarah Buckley. Good evening. We're going to start on this end with you, sir.
Sorry, I'll be reading off of my phone. Hello, my name is John Plummer. I'm a rising sophomore at Georgetown University, and it's an honor to be able to testify today. I was raised in Dallas, Texas, just like a previous speaker, and also a rural town by a single mom whose dream was for me to attend university so I could have the life that she didn't. Poverty made daily responsibilities a zero-sum game. My mom was too busy working to be present at the home or to take me to extracurriculars or cook or to take care of the pets, because if she took her eye off the ball for a second, rent might not be paid. It takes a village to raise a child, and low-income and first-generation students are increasingly being pushed out of elite universities and universities as a whole because they lack the support network capable of providing the extracurriculars they need for a good application to university. The only reason I could do extracurriculars is because I had a family friend who drove me to them, and so many of my friends weren't that lucky. Another question is, what about rural students where the extracurriculars simply don't exist? Legacy admissions further this trend by definition taking away seats from potentially underrepresented students and giving it to people who have already accumulated generational wealth and a degree in their family, as well as a support network. There's a belief that legacy admissions help racial diversity, and if you hold this belief, I hope I can change your mind by repeating a few of the facts that have already been stated today. There are fewer black students at Georgetown in 2022 than in 2001. At Johns Hopkins, when they ended legacy preference, the number of underrepresented students went from 18 to 34%. Legacy admissions do not help racial equality on the whole, but they worsen it. There are more legacy students at Georgetown than black students and more legacy students than Hispanic students. Speaking from my own time at Georgetown, Georgetown has become disconnected from reality. It's a bubble. 60% of the student body is in the top 10%, and 20 is in the top 1, and 3% in the bottom quintile. Universities have a role in our democratic ecosystem to be equalizers, settings for new perspectives to be heard and new talent to emerge. When we keep admitting the same tax bracket, academia can't serve its purpose and our democracy is worse for it. And as has already been stated, removing legacy admissions won't magically solve things, but it's an important step that 70% of the DC area wants to happen. Thank you for those who vote against legacy, despite it benefiting their family. It speaks to a devotion as a public servant. And Georgetown, for my family, was a great equalizer, and now I can help accumulate generational wealth. In the future, I'll buy my mom a nice house and alleviate the stresses of poverty from her life, and I'll never forget this. Thank you.
I'd like to start off by thanking the board for allowing me to testify today. My name's William, and I'm a student at Georgetown, but I was also born and raised right here in Washington, D.C. And my family and I currently live in Ward 3. Today, this board is going to take an important vote on the subject of legacy admissions in the district, hopefully in support of the council taking up the FAIR Act. And I'm here to argue that legacy admissions is a practice that goes against our shared goal as DC residents of building an equitable and thriving city. I should make clear that I attended a private high school here in DC, and so my path to attending a four-year university was significantly easier than most other students in the district. Moreover, of the few other Georgetown students I have met who also grew up here in DC, the vast majority of them attended a private high school, and many of them benefited from legacy preference. I'm not passing judgment on these students, or for that matter myself, but I hope this makes clear a fundamental flaw with the current college admissions landscape. That is that most of the people gaining access to elite institutions are the ones who have already enjoyed significant privilege throughout their lives. This is true all across the country, and especially true here in DC. I know you've heard already that legacy preference compounds this issue by advantaging already wealthy, typically white students in college admissions. At Georgetown, 10% of the slots for incoming students are reserved for legacy students, and those students are more than twice as likely to be admitted than other students. The statistics for other DC higher educational institutions like GW, American, and Catholic are similar. Moreover, legacy preferences' impact on diversity at these schools cannot be understated. The enrollment rate of black students at Georgetown is only 5%. The enrollment rate of Latinx students is only 7%. There are more students in the top 1% of earners than the bottom 60%. Just think about that for a second. The most famous university in DC, one of the most diverse cities in the United States, is only 5% black and 7% Latinx. I should note that these schools receive hundreds of millions of DC taxpayer dollars, and yet we have these terrible diversity numbers. Now, less wealthy students and students of color are significantly less likely to benefit from legacy admissions, and so the practice simply takes spots away from them, which is incredibly unfair. Especially in the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling overturning the practice of affirmative action, racial diversity at these DC schools is going to crater. Given this reality, it is time for us to outlaw a practice that takes spots away from qualified low-income students and students of color. In DC, only 53% of high school students enroll in post-secondary education, and only 18% of them will graduate within 6 years of enrollment. I'm confident that, if given a fair chance and given a lot more opportunity than they are now, every DC high school student would be able to attend and graduate college. Of course, banning legacy admissions is only a small step towards that goal, but it is a step, and a relatively easy one at that. Let's be a leader on this issue and send a message to DC students that they deserve a shot to attend their local colleges, irrespective of if their parents went to school there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for allowing me to testify today, and thank you to my classmates who have made this possible. My name is Michelle Ramos, and I'm a proud first-generation and low-income college student at Georgetown. While I have called the district my home away from home for the last couple of years, I'm originally from the south border of Texas, where I attended a public high school in one of the most underprivileged and undereducated communities in the state. When I announced to my parents and peers that I was attending Georgetown, no one had a clue where it was or if it was quote-unquote a good school. To this day, my mother loves telling her friends that her daughter attends an Ivy in Washington, D.C. because she believes that it is one of the best places for someone to build their career and future. And yet, despite the great pride that my family and community members feel for me, it is often hard to feel that same pride when at university. At Georgetown, I am one of less than 700 students who identify as first generation and/or low income, and who have to constantly explain to their parents what documents they need to find to fill out financial aid. At Georgetown, I'm also one of the small 7% of students who identify as Latina and serve as students as their parents' translators for important university documents. In contrast, my classes are filled with students who received ACT and SAT prep since middle school, had private tutors and coaches, and attended private schools that tracked them into the university of their dreams. And while I do not hold their privilege against them, I am constantly reminded of the difference in our experiences and how many more students like me could be enjoying the resources and opportunities that only a school like Georgetown has to offer. In other words, while attending Georgetown will certainly change my life and hopefully impact my lifelong earnings, as well as economic security of my family, for the majority of legacy students, attending Georgetown is simply a continuation of a life of economic prosperity and opportunity. I'm not saying that these legacy students don't deserve an education or the opportunity to attend Georgetown. I'm saying that their needs should not be prioritized above those of first-generation and/or low-income students like myself, whose lives would be significantly improved after attending such a prestigious institution. To be clear, ending legacy admissions would not inhibit legacy students from attending Georgetown or any other DC university. Students whose parents attended an elite institution and have given them access to test prep and private educations would no doubt still have a higher chance of being accepted to their university of choice. However, ending legacy preference would mean that their already abundant privilege would not be coupled with an extra benefit. While I attend Georgetown entirely on university-funded and outside-funded scholarships and have therefore never had to worry about having to take a break from college or taking out loans, my experience is an exception at institutions like these. Not only are my first-generation and low-income peers having to struggle with making their university experience financially feasible by working more than 2 jobs a semester, but they are currently having to combat stigma against being an FGLI in a place where privilege is a standard. I won't repeat the stats because you've already heard those. Georgetown diversity has not seen a significant increase in the past 20 years, despite the growing diversification of our country. It is time for educational institutions to be more representative of the population of the communities and places that they serve. I hope that after hearing all these testimonies, you will vote in favor of ending legacy admissions and will remember testimonies like ours.
Thank you. First, I'd like to encourage you to create avenues for families and teachers and staff who would like to testify on subjects like this that involved highly personal and private issues to do so either anonymously or privately. It's hard enough to discuss these issues with anyone, let alone in a public forum where we are forced to lay bare our pain and discuss issues that truly belong to our children. There are a number of people who can't testify here today, so I will try and elevate their concerns as well as my own. Several families have told me they've already left or are planning on leaving DCPS because they know the medical challenges of their children cannot be handled by the current plan. One family was told flat out by their school that their child's needs would not be met. They didn't feel comfortable testifying because they didn't want to get their school in trouble, and this is a sentiment I have heard repeatedly from parents, students, and teachers. One of the biggest issues I've seen is that there are simply no adults who can sit and care for sick kids in the schools. The budget cuts this year are going to make this all the worse, and I shudder to think what this will do to our truancy rates. When there's no adult to care for a sick student, they are either sent back to the classroom, which leads to more sick kids and even sick teachers and staff, or a parent or guardian is called to take them home. The staff member at our school who's a certified AOM and handled most of this retired this year. Her position will not be filled, and I don't know if we have another AOM taking her place, even though we're legally required to at least have 3. My student had to stay home an extra week last fall after a second bout of pneumonia in less than 2 months. When I explained to our physician that I wasn't sure if there would be anyone at school, the health suite, to make sure he could use his inhalers, the doctor told me to keep him home until his infection had cleared and that he had no further symptoms. This lack of coverage has meant that he had to stay home with symptoms that I normally would have sent him to school with. He lost so much classroom time that his teachers were unable to catch him up to the rest of the class. He fell hopelessly behind, and that led to a complete change in his demeanor. He went from a kid who loved school and got there early to coming home with reasons why he should stay home and try and avoid it altogether. I know my student is not alone in this, and I've talked to a number of other families and students who have also fallen into this pattern. I'm not sure what the exact number is or if it's discoverable by this body or other education agencies in the city, but I'd be very interested to see how this contributes to our chronic absenteeism and truancy. Under the prior system, our dedicated school nurses have often helped identify mental health issues in our students. Frequent visits to the nurse's office with upset stomachs and headaches are often caused by anxiety and other issues, better handled by our student support team. When we had a dedicated nurse, she was able to work with that team to properly ID these issues. That no longer happens, and we all know that there are more of these issues than ever before. With fewer teachers and staff members in the classroom, I can only imagine how many students are going unscreened and undiagnosed as these issues persist and get worse. Early interventions and supports are critical to getting students well and back on track. With budget cuts our schools were just forced to make, I see little to no hope, especially given the fact that DC is still in the midst of a lawsuit for failing to provide adequate mental health services for children. We are also losing teachers and staff who are certified AOMs. Quite a few of the AOM certified teachers I spoke to have shared that they are thinking of leaving DCPS. They feel unsupported. No. Thank you for passing your resolution, but please make that option open.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Sarah Buckley. I live in Southwest DC with my rising first grader and rising preschooler who will be attending Amadon Bowen next year. I'm also a member of Parents United for School Health, and I'd like to address the health issues that you've been discussing this evening. In March, a kindergartner at Shepherd Elementary School was hospitalized after being accidentally exposed to a food that she was allergic to. Fox 5 reported that although the student had an anaphylaxis action plan that required administering an EpiPen, she was given Benadryl. Only after her guardian came to pick her up from school, noticed her symptoms, what were paramedics called. The student was taken to Children's National Hospital and had to be intubated. This is a nightmare for any parent, but it's a particularly poignant nightmare for an allergy parent like me. My rising first grader has severe food allergies to several foods. He has an anaphylaxis action plan and a 504 accommodations plan. He carries an EpiPen in his backpack, and we provide an EpiPen to the school health suite. But as the incident at Shepherd demonstrates, none of that matters if there are not competent and trained professionals in those health suites. DC Health's current model for staffing those health suites fails to provide that. Last summer, DC Council repealed a law mandating that each DC public and charter school be staffed with a full-time nurse. That repeal made way for DC Health to implement the cluster model, under which most schools are supposed to be staffed with health technicians that receive first aid training and administration of medication training. I say supposed because, as you well know, DC Health failed to even deliver on that promise. At my school, we had inconsistent part-time coverage for the first half of the school year. In December, I received a call to inform me that my son's emergency epinephrine medication order had never been entered into CSS's records. The actual EpiPen was then discovered behind a computer in the health suite, not in the drawer where such medications are supposed to be stored. But even as designed, the cluster model is fatally flawed. It quadruples the number of students served by each licensed nurse. The nurse is expected to supervise health technicians from afar and leaves techs to rely on a telehealth line that was never fully funded and even never fully implemented, even going into this next year. Let me quickly highlight two other reasons why health technicians are not a substitute for school nurses. Health technicians are not trained or licensed to assess student health. That means if my son comes in complaining of stomach pains and a rash, they are not able to identify that as symptoms of anaphylaxis that require epinephrine. Maybe they can with his anaphylaxis action plan, but note that 25% of all food allergy reactions in schools are in students that have not been diagnosed with that food allergy. Next, consider that the administration of medication training that they receive is expressly supposed to be designed where the nurse is supposed to be supervising the health technician. The current system is not delivering on that as designed, and DC Health is failing in implementing it. Thank you.
We will now move for a round of member questions, starting with our student members. Representative Kelly?
Thank you all for your testimonies. As for the nurses, I definitely agree with most of the stuff you said, and hopefully we can have more partnerships with outside community organizations to actually train the nurses. And thank you.
Representative Washington?
Thank you all for coming. I don't have any questions, but thank you all for sharing your personal testimonies.
Representative Henderson?
Hi, thank you all for your testimony. I think the staffing issue is troubling to all of us, and I think from the panel earlier, it seems that we need to be much more proactive and aggressive. I'm not sure exactly what the answers are. It sounds like compensation might be part of that. I don't know if either of the two of you were here during that panel, but if you were, anything strike you from what was shared there that you think is worth pursuing?
Right, well, I think the number one solution would be to restore the mandate. We should be setting a standard for ourselves that our students deserve a nurse in every school. But failing that, DC Health should at least consider changes to the cluster model that actually take into account school size. Right now, you could have a cluster with a school with 1,000 students, and where you can have clusters with just hundreds of students. The size of each cluster varies widely. DC Health is also relying on outdated data to decide on which schools are the most medically needy and deserving of LPNs and RNs. But finally, I would suggest that you scrutinize DC Health's claims that the nursing shortage compels them from meeting the staffing goals. Is it a nursing shortage, or is it unwillingness to offer competitive salaries? Is it a shortage, or is it deeply dysfunctional mismanagement? You probably know that DC started last school year saying that 90% of schools had full-time coverage, and that dropped to 52% in a matter of months. I think that says that something is going wrong within the agency itself.
And when you say outdated data, what is it that they're using, and how could that be updated more frequently?
I think a panelist earlier mentioned the health records that get turned in to where families have to identify what conditions their students have. Mm-hmm. There isn't a good system for making sure that that is accurate, and they're certainly not being updated in real time in order to make staffing decisions.
Mm-hmm. And do you know if those follow students when they change schools?
I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Representative O'Leary?
I want to thank you, the Georgetown students. This is not bashing Georgetown night at all, because y'all are perfect representatives of what you are testifying about. And I want to mention to you again that you've got to carry the torch for this. And the next step that you'll probably be taking, because we are going to, I'm pretty sure going to pass this our resolution, is it goes to the city council. And then you will have to testify with the city council. And so you're not finished, you're just beginning. This is commencement, as they call it. Ms. Buckley, I think you were here for our panel, and we are going to be working on part of Representative Washington's legacy on the board is that she sponsored the panel, so that we are going to be getting a resolution together to forward it to the city council, so that the city council can do something to get it to the mayor, because as you all know, the mayor is responsible for everything as far as education in the city is concerned. So that's where the buck stops, and we have to make sure that the buck is perfect so that we can get nurses in every school. Thank you all very much.
Representative Williams.
Yes, thank you all for your testimony. I echo what Representative O'Leary said with regards to the testimony from the Georgetown students. I appreciate that in pushing to make your university more equitable and representative, and using your voices and experiences to really advocate here today. So I look forward to moving that resolution along. With regards to the school nurses, I'm equally as troubled as all of you are, and other colleagues. And I think with regards to the shortage thing, we just shouldn't be compromising a standard like you're saying. So whether it be nurses, whether it be mental health practitioners, right? Like, there's ways for us to think creatively about where we source the needs for our students. And just saying that we're not going to provide those needs doesn't seem acceptable to me. So I am curious kind of, you know, if you have any thoughts, either Ms. Mitchell or Ms. Buckley, of how we can think more creatively as like an ecosystem, you know, to be able to make sure that need happens. Because whether it be my teaching experience in Detroit or my teaching experience here, like, there are so many things that are just exacerbated when student health needs are not met on a daily basis. And I think hearing that the cluster model doesn't even have equitable ratios for nurses at schools is like, oh my. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts of, like, you know, the challenges that we have around supply of competent professionals.
When Ward 3 Dems passed our resolution, we actually had a nurse from Ward 4 who had just left school because she felt like it was completely unsafe. So I would actually argue that this model is pushing nurses out, like actually really well-trained staff. And I'm seeing the same thing happen with teachers and staff. They don't feel supported, and they're starting to feel like they're going to be liable for something really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue that, like, we've kind of reached a tipping point where we're going to get, it's going to cost either way. I'd like it to not cost a life. It
Right.
will lead to a lawsuit. You know, we're already being sued 3 different ways. So I think that it's a little bit silly to me that it's a money thing. I feel like whenever we've talked to nurses about this, it's been money, money, money. They're getting more money in other places and more support. So to me, it's just finding the funding. We seem to be able to magically find funding for truancy. This leads to truancy. This leads to chronic absenteeism. I don't think you can have that conversation without talking about this conversation. And I'd also add that vaccines, those records are not coming in or going out. We had another issue where I think they were trying to take students out of school because their records weren't up to date, but that's a DC problem and maybe a student's problem because we didn't have notice about it. So it is becoming a really big issue where students are not being able to access their education. It's money. I've heard it's money.
And it can also be policy, just to kind of re-norm, you know, like, there's so many things that have fallen by the wayside, you know, current pandemic, to just make sure that we're prioritizing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Chang.
Good evening. No questions at this time. Thank you.
Representative Goulet.
So the 2 issues near and dear to my heart. I think, students, you did an excellent job. You know you have my support on this resolution. So let's talk about this legislation. So I'll tell you the saga of the bill. So this was back, originally the bill was drafted by David Grasso. It included an expansion of school nurses, but didn't go to the full 40 hours. per week at every public and public charter school. When the bill was referred to the Committee on Health, we had a hearing. Vince Gray was the chair. I was his committee director at the time. And the public was really clear on what they wanted. They wanted a full-time, 40-hour-a-week school nurse at every public and public charter school. If you were tracking the issue at the time, the impediment was the DC Health director did not support this model. So what we said to her was, what would it take to get, a full 40-hour-a-week nurse? It was actually like pulling teeth to try to get the answer on it. We finally had to go to the CFO. They gave us a price tag of $15 million a year. And so we'll find the money. We'll find $15 million a year and we'll fund it. And what the director then came back and says, well, even if you find the money, I still can't hire nurses fast enough. So we said, well, how much can you hire per year? We'll make sure we fund that amount every year. You tell us the maximum number of nurses you can hire and we'll fund it. And so we did that for a period of years. Started in 2017, and but then the committee transitioned over, and I left. So we were finding it was about $500,000 to $1 million a year to keep this going. And the reason it got repealed is council's got a rule where if you don't add funding to a bill, I think within 2 years, then it automatically gets repealed. And we couldn't pass the bill without a subject to appropriations clause, because then we'd have to put all the money up at once and it would have just sat there, because DCL said we cannot spend $15 million. So I think what we really probably need to do is revisit this with another bill that maybe tackles this thing and gets back to it. I mean, 3 things I'm thinking about: the competitive salaries you mentioned is trying to find a way to force through the children's contract at DC Health higher salaries. 2 is maybe looking at student loan repayment to try to attract and retain nurses. Possibly even looking at trying to get some sort of housing vouchers if they stay in the city in this career track. And then lastly, an end to this cluster model. I think it's contributing to burnout. And from both the nurse and the student perspective, it's preventing the building of trust and relationships within the school. So I would love to work with you on legislation. We actually have the power as a board to introduce a bill. I think this would be a good one to do that with. And I would love to try to get this back out there, get another hearing on it, and then try to keep the pressure on DC Health to get this done. So thank you both for your testimony. I'm sorry I didn't leave you time for questions, but I thank you for your testimony tonight.
Vice President Patterson.
Thank you. One of the things when you come behind Representative Goulet, who has so much experience at the council, there's not a whole bunch to say afterwards, because he presents a pretty strong argument of what we can do as a State Board of Education, because a lot of authority was taken from us. But we are a bully pulpit for you, and we appreciate each one of you coming here, whether we're talking about the legacy or we're talking about nurses, so that we can elevate that and then do the things that he so eloquently and appropriately discussed about our next actions. We want to be that group that advocates on behalf of our parents. I have a child who also has an EpiPen at school. I'm concerned if he should ever have an episode, what will happen with him. Luckily, when he did have an episode one time, when we were at Ludlow Taylor Elementary School, I was able to get to him and take him directly to a doctor. I personally took him to the doctor after he had that episode to Children's, rushing up North Capitol. So we want to be that group. We want to make sure that we are following up with parents, and we're going to do the resolution that we discussed that comes from Representative Washington, and we're also going to make sure that we push forward the council to address this more appropriately. So thank you for your testimony.
President Thompson.
A couple things. So one, Ms. Mitchell, you were not here when I said it earlier, but this is our first attempt at hybrid. We have worked very hard to even have it as an option. And so we are seeing if it works tonight. So far, Representative Chang, our illustrious guinea pig, has been very successful. So that is a good sign. Second, you said AOM in your testimony like 3 times. What is AOM?
Administration of Medicine. So it's a special license that a number of our teachers and staff have so that they're able to do EpiPens and different medications.
Okay, these are the volunteers.
I would add,
okay.
I don't think this has come up, but there's no pathway to encourage our teachers and staff to get that?
Yes,
There's no-
this came up.
Okay.
So this
Yeah,
came
yeah,
up
yeah.
in the expert panel. I don't think I had heard that terminology, but
Sorry,
I was
yeah.
like, I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly who you were referring to. I do have a question about the administration of the EpiPen and why it wasn't followed. I hear you saying health techs are not trained to identify, but I'm struggling to understand why the health plan was still not followed. If that, like, if you have just more context for if those things, if you're saying those things are related, or if that was the reason, like if is it correlation, is it causation, or is it something else
If the
together?
If the situation at Shepherd is anything like what we had at Amadon Bowen, it could be a number of things. It could have been a health technician that was just covering that school for a day because they've been moving pieces around in order to try to staff as much as they can. It could be that the health technician wasn't appropriately trained on what the symptoms of anaphylaxis are.
Okay, so it could
just
be,
negligence.
it could be anything from they're there that day, they're not familiar with the actual 504 plan in place, therefore they didn't follow it, or they didn't diagnose it appropriately, therefore they didn't follow it. It could be a lot of different things, is what you're saying to me.
Yeah, including chaos within the health suite itself.
Mhm.
I've also heard that there are different people in the health suite each time,
Okay.
putting things back in different places, so there's not one person to say this is where this goes. So even in an emergency situation, some of the people that are in the health suite can't even find things.
Yes.
So I would also add that when there's a
Because of the different,
because
okay.
you- and you're
That
never-
makes sense.
it's
I have
never the
one
same
more,
people.
I have one more question. So, and it goes to something that was said earlier. You noted there should be more ways to testify, like confidentially. Are there specific things that you would recommend?
I think being able to just make it a possibility to testify anonymously in some way, whether that's written testimony, that it's personally received by someone on the staff who can allow that to happen. I know this comes up a lot with children with disabilities as well. I'm a parent of a child with a disability. I don't like to talk in public about that because that's his story. So it's really difficult to get people to come and speak in these public rooms about these intensely private things. So I'd say being able to offer written testimony in a way, there should definitely be some way that you can encrypt it, where you can verify that it's an actual person. Even if people are just able to come to board members independently and offer that in a way, I think that would also be helpful.
Thank you. You can come to board members independently, and that is I'm way over my time. So I wanted to make sure Director Butler. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your testimony. Everyone can submit a written testimony at any time. And as a reminder to students, if you have not submitted your written testimony, we would love to have them at SBOE@dc.gov, because we collect them and share them back with our members. Thank you all. We'll start on the end with you, sir.
Good evening, distinguished board members. My name is Isaiah J. Hodges, and I am a Black first-generation student at Georgetown University, and by proxy, a proud resident of Ward 2. Up until my senior year of high school, I had never previously considered even attending college. The idea just seemed to take a back seat to working 35 hours a day or 35 hours a week in order to be able to supplement the income my family cannot provide, to maintain ownership of our home. But I was lucky enough to receive acceptance to Georgetown University as a par member of the class of 2026. and I am incredibly thankful for that opportunity. I would like to draw the board's attention to how legacy admissions directly affect the future of higher education for grade 8 students in the DC area and have additional implications for the city's pool of educated and working professionals. As we previously discussed, the socioeconomic and racial diversity of some of DC's most prestigious universities has been constrained by allowing the ongoing practice of legacy admissions. At Georgetown, approximately 10% of every class is reserved for legacy students. This is a direct contrast to the 5% and 7% student population that is composed of Black and Latino students respectively. Socioeconomically, only 14% of the student population is composed of those in the bottom 60%, whereas the much larger 20% of the population is composed of those in the top 1%. These statistics are not only reflective of Georgetown, as both GW and Catholic University have similar recent demographic reports. So legacy is harmful to diversity, but how might ending such a practice help DC students? In reports from the Washington Post, we see that only 18% of current high school freshmen in the city are expected to finish college within 6 years of graduating high school. Currently, of DC's over 90,000 enrolled public school students, 63% are Black and 19% are Latino. Ending legacy admissions could give these students better odds at attending university in their home city. But the potential harms of legacy don't end there. Not only do legacy admissions affect underserved students' odds of attending college or the demographic diversity of DC's college campuses, but the practice has additional implications in the pool of professionals serving in positions of influence throughout the city. Around 44% of Georgetown graduates will go on to work in the DC area. As observed, students attending universities like Georgetown or GW that practice legacy admissions are preferentially white and upper class. The natural conclusion of such practice is that similar demographics might be reflected in the professionals potentially entering DC's workforce in influential sectors such as public policy, management consulting, and healthcare. With education follows influence, and if DC's students born and raised continue to be denied opportunities to access higher education, how can we expect to secure the values of diversity, equity, and community understanding, not only within DC's academic institutions, but also in its community of educated and highly influential professionals? The DC Board of Education's support for the FAIR Act could be a small step in ending both the educational and professional inequality that has plagued the District of Columbia for over a century. The public opinion makes it overwhelmingly clear that they disapprove of legacy admissions. I implore you to show us that you truly have the populace's interest at heart and are willing to be a force of educational reform with the nation's capital city. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good evening, distinguished members of the DC State Board of Education. Thank you for your time and commitment to open discussion on legacy and donor admission practices in higher education. My name is Ayush Murarka, and I'm a rising junior at Georgetown University. I occupy a very privileged position within my community as a college-educated Indian American, and it is because of this privilege that I feel compelled to speak out against a practice that creates lasting downward pressure on opportunities for my peers from marginalized and excluded communities within higher education. I firmly believe that the past should inform our future. When we look at legacy admissions, there is nothing worth salvaging from its problematic origins. Ivy League schools and other elite universities instituted legacy admissions in order to exclude a growing immigrant population from participating in educational opportunities reserved for white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. An elegant solution to a manufactured problem, legacy and donor preference promised a spot for rich and wealthy families as kin, shirking the responsibility of a transparent meritocracy. Today, its proponents believe that such admissions drive alumni donations and engagement, with little to no elaboration on its ill side effects. However, many studies have demonstrated little to no impact on donations after abolishing legacy and donor admissions. These elite universities that continue this practice boast exorbitant costs of attendance, some of the highest in the world. And I ask you, if a 90,000-year sticker price is sufficient to abandon nepotism, then don't we have much bigger issues than potentially losing a few donations? As you have heard from my colleagues today, there are a slew of statistics to be cited against legacy admissions, and I urge you to internalize their well-researched testimonies and stories. While many elite universities shrink their acceptance rates and dismantle the responsibility of a diverse student body in a post-affirmative action world, legacy students continue to receive a significant edge when compared to their peers. As a student in the School of Foreign Service, I'm driven by the diversity of perspectives, backgrounds, and experiences that complicate my understanding of the world more. A college education can change the entire trajectory of a student's life, especially for members of marginalized communities within the district. Missing the opportunity to challenge this unfair and unethical practice tarnishes their commitment to academic excellence while atrophying the quality of education that elite universities tout. There is a reason why we are testifying to you, members of the State Board of Education. You are in a unique position to act on a practice that threatens equity, access, and quality education for generations of students. Left to their own devices, elite universities have proudly forsaken diversity, equity, and inclusion in favor of regressive, ineffective, and dishonest policies. It is clear then that this change must come from a dedicated and forward-thinking group. With 70% of your constituents speaking out against legacy and donor admissions, students and families across the district are hoping that you will rise to the occasion. Thank you so much for your time.
Take this mic. Hi, my name is Will Ndika, and I coach first and second grade soccer for DC Scores at Amadon-Bowen Elementary School in Ward 6. My testimony today is my own and is not made on behalf of DC Scores. I've testified twice before the DC Council's Health Oversight Committee on behalf of my player students as I wanted to receive the administration of medication training because I was concerned that there was no longer a school nurse available for aftercare activities, a situation that Chairperson Christina Henderson, in the follow-up discussion to my testimony with the CEO from Children's School Services, who said nurses were off the clock at 3:15, called YOLO, which stands for You Only Live Once, meaning you're on your own if you're in aftercare. She asked the public officials that as a parent, I'm asking myself, what are we doing? In preparation for this testimony, I and several of my colleagues who testified here tonight had a call on Monday night, and we were joined by a licensed nurse with over 20 years of experience and who has held high-level positions in professional nurse organizations. And what she told us was extremely troubling. According to this individual's DCPS sources, CSS has apparently fired its entire IT staff over the summer. This is significant because this department was tasked with tracking within the schools how many kids have diabetes or food allergies, which in turn form the basis of where nursing services are allocated based on need. According to the DCPS source, no one apparently knows who is going to take this over and the role and who will be tracking the data. And indeed, sections of the CSS site are no longer functioning. Number two, CSS has, according to the DCPS source, stopped all administration of medication training. The cluster model relies heavily on AOM-trained staff to fill in health suite gaps. Number three, this individual also told me that there's been substantial attrition in the number of nurses, both because salaries in other jurisdictions are higher, subpar working conditions, and the fear that they are putting their license on the line by delegating their authority to less qualified nurse techs, who are replacing them at lower salaries. Now, this last point leads to the question of where the $25 million grant money allocated by DC Health to Children's National and its CSS subsidiary, if it is replacing nurses with lower paid nurse techs and it's just fired its entire presumably well-paid IT department. In the January 4th hearing, Ms. Henderson asked Children's National CEO point blank what it would take to put a nurse back in every school, and he answered, quote, upward of 30 million. To put this in perspective, and I'm going to qualify this by saying that I'm not an expert in executive salaries and that CSS duties are by no means even close to the majority of the responsibilities of its executives. Nevertheless, as a 501c3 nonprofit, CSS is required to publicly disclose its tax records. And for tax year 2022, the top executives listed in CSS's tax statement made over $5 million in salary and other compensations, and the top four executives made a combined $8.5 million. I'm not saying that they should donate their salaries, but that's a third of the total school budget. Thank you for your time.
Evening, President Thompson, board members, and staff of the Board of Education. My name is Cesar Toledo, and I'm a Ward 6 resident and Deputy Director of DC Education Reform Now State Chapter. I'm here today to speak in support of SR 2416, the State Board's resolution calling for an end to legacy. These preferences exacerbate challenges Native DC students face accessing college, and they should be banned. We have yet to see the complete data-backed understanding of the negative impacts of the disastrous Supreme Court ruling striking race-conscious admissions, but estimates show that it could lead to a 10% drop in Black and Latino student enrollments nationwide. As a first-generation Latino raised by immigrant parents who came to this country at a very young age, I see my story reflected across thousands of DC Latino students who face unprecedented hurdles escaping the poverty cycle seeking to complete a college degree. Nationally, the gap in degree completion rate between Latinos and their white peers has increased, and in DC, our Latino students have the lowest post-secondary enrollments compared to their peers at 44%, with an estimated 40% of the city's population foreign-born, we must dismantle racist barriers that disproportionately impact our most vulnerable neighbors. It's time that DC leaders step up and join Virginia and Maryland in making college access equal and based on merit, not familial bloodlines that disproportionately benefit the white elite class. There is notable support for ending legacy admissions. For example, 70% of DC voters support banning this practice. 8 organizations, including the NAACP, signed on to earn DC's letter opposing legacy admissions. Nearly 500 residents across all 8 wards, including students at Georgetown, George Washington, Howard, signed a petition banning legacy. Georgetown students have been leading on this issue for years, collecting hundreds of signatures that have been stonewalled by the university administration. Nationally, leaders have spoken out against legacy, including President Biden, the First Lady Michelle Obama, members of Congress, including Senators Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and members of Congress, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Barbara Lee. And I think it's summarized perfectly by the NAACP president and CEO, who said legacy and donor admissions have long served to perpetuate an inherently racist college admissions process. We know DC has a post-secondary crisis, and we clearly understand that legacy admissions are part of that problem. And we thankfully have seen this grow into a national movement. And to close, too few DC native students are attending and graduating college. And as a city, we must urgently address this crisis. We know legacy isn't the only issue, but we hope it's something that we can take in the right direction. DC should ban legacy preference as a concrete strategy to increase that college access for students, especially for those furthest from opportunity. We must take immediate action to remedy this inequitable practice. Privileged students should not get preference in admissions at the detriment of Black and Latino first-generation students. Let's give all students a fair shot by ending legacy admissions. Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth McDermott, and I have been a practicing school nurse in DC independent schools for 25 years. I have served on the board of directors of the National Association of School Nurses and have worked writing position statements that guide best practice for school health throughout the United States. In 2022, I was the DC School Nurse of the Year. I am here tonight as a practicing school nurse because I am concerned that decisions are being made about school nurse practice in the district at the highest levels by well-meaning individuals not licensed to practice nursing. I want to strongly urge DC to return to its previous model of having a licensed registered nurse in every school. The students of DCPS deserve nothing less. There is a place for med techs and CNAs in busy health suites. Working under the direct in-person supervision of nurses, they can give daily meds, assist with paperwork, and provide basic first aid, thus allowing nurses more time for assessment and care coordination. But those tasks are where their training ends. Their training does not prepare them in any way to provide care independently. CNAs and med techs are taught to perform tasks. They are taught that if A and B and C are present, then they do D. But illnesses and emergencies are not predictable like that. Insulin administration, which if not done correctly, can result in death, is more complicated than a flowchart. It requires significant assessment. Unlike techs, licensed nurses are well educated and licensed to perform physical assessments. The ability to accurately and quickly assess a patient's health status in an emergency may mean the difference between life and death or permanent disability. Schools with nurses have been shown to have better outcomes, fewer medication errors, higher immunization rates, and better rates of attendance. Nurses have been shown to send students home less frequently because we're able to assess their health status. Nurses are also able to follow up with truant students to determine if they were truly in need of out for medical reasons or need other types of support. Unlike techs and CNAs, nurses are trained to perform mental health assessments and perform short-term counseling. In this current environment where DCPS is struggling with high truancy rates, low immunization rates, and servicing students with significant mental health needs, DC schools need school nurses. Our students' medical needs are complex. The days of handing healthy students Band-Aids and ice packs are over. For this reason, nurses cannot be replaced by techs and CNAs who have only basic first aid training and must, by virtue of that training, practice under the direct supervision of a nurse. Asking a CNA or med tech to practice independently is outside the scope of their practice and thus poses a danger to the students and staff and is a liability to the school, the med tech or CNA themselves, and the nurses who supervise them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will now call for a round of member questions. Representative O'Leary.
Ms. McDermott, this is a fabulous document that explains why a school nurse should be in every school. And we're going to be working on that. And I just want to think of one thing. A couple of years ago, we passed a resolution about every school should have a librarian. And we worked really hard along with the teachers union and with the city council to make sure that all schools have a librarian. But this is critical, that each school should have a nurse. And I really appreciate this testimony because it very simply explains why there has to be a nurse in every school.
Agree. Thank you.
Yep. And for the Georgetown students, you are perfect representatives of Georgetown University and what it should be, because we're talking about an exclusionary society. All right? We're talking about students who feel privileged because of their heritage to go to Georgetown, rather than because they can add to the Georgetown society. So I just want to tell you how much I appreciate all of your testimony, especially both of these testimonies that sort of come together, but we're going to be working on both of these.
Representative Williams.
Yeah, thank you all for your testimony. Mr. Toda, I agree, like, that this is like a start, right? Like, I think you framed the issue well, and I'm happy to join in support of all of you today with moving this forward. I mean, equitable higher education access, can't remember, one of you had said just as like a very transformative opportunity, and limiting those experiences, you know, kind of chips away at the values that we allege that we stand by. So thank you for spearheading this and working with other members to move it forward. Mr. DK, so can you share more kind of like what your experience was at council, and kind of it's just like, I mean, it's not surprising, but it's still startling, right, to hear that like we're lowering the standard, and that there isn't clear record keeping, and also that we, you know, council members also just don't feel that we can move forward with maintaining a nurse at every school. So I was curious if you could speak to that a little more.
Well, I think one of the things that struck me, right, at that hearing, and Mr. Goulet was there, and so with Ms. Thompson, that the enormous support, even for the council, right, that there is for a return to a full-time nurse in every school. As a matter of fact, at our ANC 6 meeting a few months ago, we had Mr. Mendelson there, and he said flat out, he said, you know, I think that every council member supports a return, right? And as Mr. Goulet has pointed out, this is parents, this is teachers, this is students, it's everyone. And it seems to be the only entities that are forward this new cluster model is Children's National, CSS, and DC Health. Right? And I just hope that this body can follow up on some of the things that were brought to light here, because they will return your phone calls.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Ms. McDermott, it was really helpful to hear you kind of clarify the unique training and importance of nurses, and how these responsibilities and capabilities can't be easily substituted. So thank you for your testimony tonight.
I'm not sure if Representative Chang is still with us online. I do not see him. So we will move to Representative Goulet.
I want to thank you all for your testimony. I thank our students for coming in. You have my full support on this. I just want to thank Education Reform Now also for their leadership on this issue, for your incredible resources you have online. If anybody should, want to learn more about this, going online, reading the paper you have posted there about the harm legacy emissions causes is really eye-opening. And just really want to thank you for your continued leadership on this and education advocacy in the city. So thank you for all you do to try to bring equity to education here in DC. On the nurse issue, I mean, Mr. Deacon, I appreciate you reminding me of the 30 million number that they put out there. Yeah. And it really shows how far we've fallen, to be honest, because the number in 2017 was 15. I mean, I was looking at the fiscal impact statement from the CFO. So that means we've had two things happen. One, the cost of nurses has gone up, and we haven't kept pace with it because we have to now pay more on average to compete with our surrounding jurisdictions, and we've lost nurses. So like now it takes, where it would have taken 15 million before, because of inflation and because we've continued to lose nurses, we now have to put in 30 to solve this gap. But I really think we need to do it, and I think the ones who need to do it are the council. I mean, I think the other challenge, though, is as I experience, this doesn't work unless DC Health gets on board, because if they, won't push the envelope with Children's through the contract that they give Children's, we're not going to get anywhere. So I think we need to apply pressure at hearings. I think getting parents to show up to council hearings where DC Health is there is going to be critical, and maybe going before the chairman's hearings too, even though it's not directly under the chairman. The influence the chairman has over the budget is the way probably forward to get a number of this magnitude funded. I think we need to probably provide a variety of levers to get there, and you talked about the, obviously everybody mentioned competitive salaries, so we need to put more money into the children's health contract and then require that to go and flow through to the nurses. So it's not up to Children's whether the nurses get a raise, it's got to be mandated. Then we would need to look at probably some sort of retention incentives, whether they be housing, student loans. So what I would like to do, since we have 30 seconds left, is afterwards work with you all. I'm glad to take a look at the bill that I drafted, see how we redraft it, and then let's try to see if we can get it reintroduced and get it funded this time. So fully funded, not just partially funded, but all the way. So thank you all. I look forward to working with you in the aftermath of this, and thanks for your advocacy on this important issue.
Thank you. Representative Henderson.
Thank you all. Ms. McDermott, do you have any reactions, responses to the discussion that we've had tonight about possible solutions, barriers? Does it sound like we're on the right track?
The nursing shortage is partly a fiscal issue. I know that we do have some contiguous jurisdictions that have lots of nurses, and a lot of our nurses have gone there because of money. I am confused why CSS has, and I assume it's CSS, and I don't know for sure, I'm an independent school nurse, but has chosen to hire agency nurses. My understanding is that agency nurses are being hired as well as agency techs.
Can you explain a little what that means, agency nurse?
They work for an agency, so a portion of the salary is paid to the agency.
So
and
they're
then
subcontracting.
And they're paid a lot more. I would love to be an agency nurse. They make a lot of money, but you're also paying the agency. So rather than paying nurses through hiring nurses on their own, they are using these agencies and then giving them my understanding is a 3-month orientation or something, and then they are allowed, they can sign on with CSS, but at a much lower rate. So they're leaving. They're staying for 3 months, they're leaving, which is why I think there's been so much turnover in the schools. So I'm questioning why they're choosing to use agencies and how that contract, was that a no-bid contract? I mean, how did that come about? Because I don't know of any other region that does that, and I don't understand it. But how they're choosing to use that money and to use agencies as opposed to hiring employees.
So there's a contract and then a subcontractor. So we're several steps removed. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Anything you want to add, sir?
No, I just wanted to add real quickly to Mr. Delay's point that I think we're at least owed an explanation of where this money and how this money is being spent. Because if the IT department's been sacked and the SES is hiring, nurse techs instead of nurses, where is that savings going? I just hope that this committee can sort of follow up on that and see what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Patterson.
Thank you. To my fellow Hoya Saxa students, thank you. I appreciate the passion, and I agree from my initial statements. I look forward to supporting ending legacy. To our Nurse of the Year, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for coming here and giving us more insight, and I look forward to working with you more as we continue this fight to make sure that we have what we need in our schools. It is so important. So thank you.
Thank you. Our children deserve that.
Yes, they do. I want to pronounce your name correctly, Mr. DK. DK. You said something that kind of my ear perked up a little bit when you said YOLO.
Yeah.
And the term. And you're on your own now, so to speak.
Yeah.
And what I got from that, and maybe you can expound on it a little bit more, is basically at the end of the school day, even though there's also programming and other things that's going on, they're left to their own, regardless of what the student's health is or what they need, because we all know that a lot of our students need after-school care, enrichment programs and things like that, but they're left to their own. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
You can expound on that?
Yes, and I will send you I was going to send this body a video of this that I'm working on, because Chairperson Henderson was astonished when the CEO of CSS flatly said that nurses are off the clock at 3:15. And she said, "Are you really?" So how have they been doing it? Out of the goodness of their hearts. But I think that highlights the problems. Right, that we no longer have full-time nurses. And as a soccer coach, right, I was there because I wanted to receive administration of medication training, but because DC Scores is a third party, I did call DC Health, see if I could get that. But there was also a general agreement among the CSS, Children's National, and DC Health that yes, AOM training for after-school staff should be available, but then 2 weeks later, they turned around and said, well, no, that's not our responsibility. That's a third-party requirement, and that was indicative of how the hearing went, is that there were just really a lot of contradictory statements. But yes, this is a very concerning aspect of the lack of full-time nurses that coaches like me. I used to be able to take my players to the health suite, to the nurse's office, and now sometimes it's just a bloody nose, but sometimes it's worse. I don't know now if there is one.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to following up more so on that, but thank you for that insight.
President Thompson.
I'm going to raise something that Representative O'Leary has raised a few times about out of school time, whether it's sports activities or other activities. And so we have talked a lot about nurses and techs tonight. We have not talked as much about like athletic trainers and just like the disparities that go along with that. I don't know if you, since you are a soccer coach, had any thoughts around needs, areas for improvement, or just commonalities you're seeing on a regular basis with athletic trainers or lack thereof.
Well, I think that in terms of the administration of medication, right, this is, I think whether you're a coach, whether you're leading an after-school program, right, I mean, we all fall into that category of what happens after school ends, right? And according to CSS, nurses are off the clock and they're not responsible. That's, in speaking to some of the nurse staff that we've had at Amidon Bowen, that's certainly not their impression, that they feel that they were, right? In the past, I was able to go to the nurse suite, the nurse's office, and that nurse would be present. But because there have been times at Amidon Bowen now, over the past half year, that there's only been a nurse tech present 3 days a week. Like I said, I can't be certain, but I think as far to your question, yeah, it is right. It's after school staff in general. I will add that in high school athletics, in high school like high school football games, there is a requirement that medical staff be present. But as Ms. Henderson also was astonished to learn that for the rest there really isn't.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you all for your testimony tonight as public witnesses. We will now call our final round of public witnesses.
Thank you.
Rachel Zhang, Vincent Johnson,
And Executive Director Butler, I think you've had some witnesses that had a scheduling conflict arrive, who had some transportation issues. So, oh, you got it?
We got it.
Oh, you got it? You're the best. You're on top of it.
If there are other witnesses who would like to testify, please come to the table at this moment. Thank you. We will start on this end. Rachel.
Good evening, members of the State Board of Education. My name is Rachel Zhang, and I'm a rising junior at Georgetown University. I'm here today to share my thoughts on legacy and donor admissions. I am from an affluent suburb of Philadelphia, and I was lucky enough to go to a very good public school for my primary and secondary education. As a student at Georgetown, I hold immense privilege to be able to attend an institution like this. Not only do I have explicit access to a private university's academic and professional resources, but for the remainder of my life, I will have access to the implicit status and prestige that a Georgetown diploma can afford. Throughout primary and secondary school, I, like many others, was told that attending college was not my privilege, but rather an achievement that I would one day reach through my own hard work. But that wasn't true, and it is even further from the truth today. The false narrative that college admissions is a meritocracy hides the fact that there are already tools built in to elevate those who are already in positions of power, at the expense of students who have never had access to the same economic and social resources. Georgetown admissions' practice of legacy and donor preference is one of those tools, disproportionately benefiting the white and the wealthy. Our higher education does not reflect the diversity of our country, and on campus you feel it all around you. You hear it in whose stories aren't told, and you see it in who isn't accepted. At Georgetown, a student from the top 1% is 3 times more likely to attend Georgetown than an average income student, even if they score identically on standardized tests. Legacy students make up 10% of Georgetown's incoming class each year, and they also outnumber Black students and Hispanic students on campus. Further, in the wake of the Supreme Court's affirmative action decision, we know that gap will only increase. In Michigan and California, their most selective schools saw the enrollment of underrepresented minorities fall by 50% after race-conscious admissions were banned. As we remove forms of affirmative action that were put in place to work against histories of systemic discrimination, it distresses me that we hold so strongly to forms of affirmative action that work in reverse, that seek to give those who already have access to generations of privilege an unfair advantage. We are all here because we want equal opportunities for education to be available to everyone, regardless of what background a student comes from. To allow legacy, which is inextricably tied to a student's race and income, to play a role in admissions only adds to the barriers that low-income students and students of color already face in earning a fair shot at the admissions process. In 2 years, when I graduate from Georgetown, I hope that what brings me joy won't be the fact that my kids have an advantage over other students, but rather the knowledge that more students of any background will be able to have the same opportunity that I had. I hope you can support us, and thank you for your time.
Hello, I would like to first thank the board members before me for taking the time to hear everyone's testimonies today. My name is Vincent Johnson, and I am one of 11 siblings. I will be the first to graduate, but I am not the oldest. I consider myself a first-generation college student. But why would I use the word consider? My grandmother had the opportunity, because of my great-grandfather's dedication to her education after the Second World War, to attend college. Only one of my 4 grandparents has ever gone to college and graduated. Neither of my parents went to college. My mother is deceased, and my father is currently incarcerated in a state facility in Pennsylvania. So I'd like to consider myself a first-generation college student. Not only that, but a student from the bottom of the socioeconomic bracket, a population in Georgetown University among many who are outnumbered by legacy admissions by at least 6%. And that is a 6% that, because of the county they were born in, because of the tax bracket they fall under, are deemed less worthy and less capable than those whose parents, by any means of virtue, had the opportunity to attend Georgetown University prior. Now, without affirmative action, you will see less and less people like myself not only able to go to college, but even fathom attending college as a concept. With legacy admissions, they will know that no matter how much they try, how much they battle the education system, how much they claw themselves out of poverty, how much they seek to change the world and circumstances before them, that their efforts mean nothing next to someone whose mother or father happened to attend college. You're all aware of the preschool to prison pipeline. You're aware of redlining, of gerrymandering, of the political and social systems that are already putting every minority and every low socioeconomic status family in America at a disadvantage. You're aware of it, and yet to allow legacy admissions would be to tell these same people that their children and the children after them deserve this same fate. To continue legacy admissions would be to tell me, after sleeping on floors of rooms without furniture, to tell my mother, who cried through putting me through education, to tell my grandmother, who fought through the remnants of segregation, that we are inherently less worthy of an education because someone else's parents had the blessing, privilege, and opportunity to attend college, and ours did not. Unfortunately, standing before you today, I cannot believe that, because that would be to reduce myself to nothing more than my own tax bracket, the county I grew up in, and generations of harm, poverty, and cyclical inequality. That would be to give preferential treatment to those that statistically already have preferential treatment, both socially and economically. And I can never do that to myself, nor do I expect another human to do that to others. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to my testimony.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to testify before this board today. I'm honored to be before you all. My name is Maria Jose Morales, and I'm a proud Latina woman and a first-generation Georgetown student. While I am fortunate enough to have had a family that encouraged education, neither of my parents graduated college. While attending elite university was always a goal of mine, schools like Georgetown were never a guarantee for a variety of reasons, among the biggest being obtaining admission. With no access to college advisors, SAT tutors, or even just trusted adults that could give me informed advice throughout the application process, the thought of earning admittance to an elite school like Georgetown felt almost unrealistic. Nonetheless, I'm proudly sitting here today feeling immensely privileged to have been able to attend the university of my dreams for the last 2 years. At Georgetown, I'm constantly uplifted by a community of students that face similar challenges to me. And while the community of FGLI students is small, they are supportive and help me navigate the unfamiliar world of higher education. During my time at Georgetown, I have passionately worked in solidarity with newcomer migrant families and children, a community that is rapidly growing and that faces unique challenges and hardships unimaginable to anyone not in their situation that now call DC home. Over the last few months, I have worked at McFarland Middle School, assisting children in their journey to learning English and entering the American education system in DC. I have been advised by DCPS administration to lesson plan around showing these kids that they should be proud to be Latino in the United States, that they can join the DC community while preserving their culture, and that they should strive for higher education. I was told to show them college is possible, and that education can help them leverage a better future in the United States. Many of them are taken to tour Georgetown during their academic school year and are encouraged to strive for a seat in a university classroom throughout their time in public school system, under the impression that Georgetown and other schools like it are attainable through hard work and merit. But what does this realistically look like for them? These talented and resilient students realistically will not have access to the resources and support systems students typically rely on to guide them through the college application process for reasons out of anyone's control. But the kids that are able to overcome those barriers will be, under the currently flawed admission process, prevented from getting a seat at the table that they have moved mountains to earn, as Georgetown and schools like it with legacy preference offer many of those seats to already wealthy, well-connected, typically white students. What does this say about these children's position in the United States? As DC education encourages migrant children to overcome vast barriers for the sake of education, to sacrifice so much in order to have the best shot at being admitted to a university, the same systems continue to perpetuate discriminatory cycles of generational oppression and legacy admission, demonstrating to these students that they are less deserving of an opportunity to leverage a better future for themselves in the United States than a student born of parents who graduated from a prestigious university using a metric completely unrelated to their respective merit. Thus, for the sake of other first-generation college applicants and migrant children trying their hardest to secure a good future for themselves through education, I'm in support of ending legacy admission, and I implore you all to be as well.
Good evening, members of the State Board of Education. After a few months, we're still here on the topic of legacy admissions, a policy created in the 1920s by Ivy Leagues with the sole purpose of keeping their universities white and Protestant. And to the surprise of few, it still works that way today. My name is Ethan Henshaw. I'm a Pell Grant recipient going into my junior year at Georgetown. And as a current student, I can speak firsthand to the class disparities on campus. You feel just how ridiculously wealthy the student body is and how different you are in your classes, in your extracurriculars, on campus, everywhere. Once you step within those gates, it feels like an alternate reality. But you don't have to take it just from my personal experience. You can take it from countless statistics. Of the top 280 universities in the country, Georgetown is ranked 238 in terms of number of Pell-eligible students. Only 11% of Georgetown students are Pell-eligible, but nationwide, 34% of all college students receive a Pell Grant. 21% of the student body comes from the top 1%, as opposed to only 14% of the student body coming from the bottom 60%. These are incredibly unbalanced and unfair ratios. Meanwhile, Howard University, just across the city, is admitting a student body that is over 40% Pell eligible with a fraction of the endowment. The New York Times reported that Georgetown gave one of the biggest preferences for wealthy students of any school in the nation, more than any Ivy League university. If you were to take two students with the same SAT and GPA in high school, a student in the top 1% would be 3 times more likely to get in than the average applicant. Georgetown, GW, and AU are also doing incredibly poorly in terms of racial diversity. Despite 12.7% of college students being black, less than 6% of the students at those universities are. Despite 22% of students being Hispanic, less than 12% of the students at those universities are. In 20 years, the number of black students at Georgetown has declined despite admitting 1,000 more students. We're here today because there's an undeniable solution to at least part of this problem. The New York Times, in the report, blamed legacy admissions for a large part of Georgetown's broken admission system. Georgetown Center on Education and the Workforce stated that ending legacy admissions would be the best way to counter and remedy the ban on race-conscious admissions effects on admissions and promote diversity. In recent years, Johns Hopkins saw their percentage of minority students jump from 18% to 34%, and they stated that ending legacy was one of the biggest reasons. The U.S. Education Department and Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona consider legacy admissions to be discriminatory and claim that ending legacy would increase diversity. So do the NAACP and the ACLU. When the organization Lawyers for Civil Rights sued Harvard, alleging that legacy admissions were amount to racial discrimination, Harvard was forced to disclose information that no other university has. 70% of their legacy admits were white, and 75% of those admits would not have been let in otherwise without the preference. If they were to remove legacy, the white population at Harvard would fall by 4%, and the amount of Asian, Black, and Hispanic students would increase by 4 to 5% at the very least, a difference that would mean the world to so many people. Our campaign has also been endorsed by Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who has been a national advocate against the practice, several city council members, Charles Wilson, who's chair of the DC Democratic Party, and a poll showed that 70% of DC residents disagree with the practice. The benefits of ending this practice are deniable. The popularity of ending this practice is undeniable. We ask that you hear us out today and put an end to this egregious form of discrimination in our universities. Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony. We will now do a round of member questions. And we will ask again that all of our public witnesses please submit your testimony via email because we collect the written testimonies. And we only have 3 from all of the witnesses tonight. We are going to start with Representative Williams.
All right. Thank you all for your testimony. I'm proud and excited to kind of stand with you to move this forward. I really appreciate your personal stories and find them very compelling. And just the passion of being here to believe in something and see it through and build a coalition. So I don't really have any additional questions. I just encourage you to continue to keep your foot on the pedal to kind of see that council continues to do what they need to do. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness of my colleagues in being able to make sure that this doesn't disadvantage or hurt other HBCUs in the district, but is meant to remedy a historical systematic discrimination that can be corrected. So thank you.
Representative Chang.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Representative Goulet.
I just want to thank you all once again. You made this happen, your advocacy, your compelling stories, and I mean, you inspired us to do this. And I think it's going to be a slam dunk with the DC Council to get this passed too. It just makes sense why we would ever give a preference to students who already have every advantage. You know, they have parents who attended elite schools, they have resources, they have every sort of you know, tool to achieve success in life. Why do they need an extra bump ahead of other people? They don't. You've made the case tonight. I don't have anything to add to it. I look forward to supporting this and then working in partnership with you to make sure that it passes through the DC Council as expeditiously as possible. So thank you all for your leadership on this, those at the table and those in the audience still. Thank you all.
And I will say I forgot our student reps, so I'm going to go back. Representative Kelly.
I missed what you said, but I'm pretty sure it was great. This was a question that I had for one of the past panels, but how might proposed changes impact the institution's demographics and financial stability?
I can take that. On financial stability, at least. We know that it will be a marginal, if zero, decrease in donations. That's where they've pointed out some fears. But when you look at the amount of donations that come into Georgetown University, first of all, their endowment is already $3 billion. They've raised $1 billion in the last year. But such a little percentage of those donations come from alumni who have any care in the world for legacy preference. And then if you take other schools who have eliminated legacy, and I believe there are almost 100 in the last couple decades, they have seen almost no decrease from their alumni in terms of donations. When a couple students and I spoke with the chief legal counsel and the chief of staff at Georgetown University, they said that ending financials was almost not involved at all in their consideration of ending legacy. They didn't feel that it would have an effect. And on terms of diversity, stats at every university and by almost every scholarly organization and organization in the country agree that diversity would go up, but I'll let anyone else touch on that if they'd like.
Thank you. Representative Washington.
I don't have any questions, but thank y'all again for coming out tonight and testifying.
Representative Henderson.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Representative O'Leary.
The admissions department at Georgetown University should use the video from y'all's testimony seriously, because that's what they talk about it being an inclusive university and trying to expand enrollment and stuff like that. But this is the reality of it. And I guess the only other thing I have is that you all need to make sure that you vote in November. And you also need to start advocating for your peers and your communities and work for voting in November, because there are elements of our society that are much more exclusionary than Georgetown is as far as legacy admissions. And that's what, you know, when you go to a graduation and the graduation speaker talks about y'all are the future and all that other blah, 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 and you can't wait to get away from the graduation. But what we've heard tonight is what should be the future of not only Georgetown and the District of Columbia, for our country. And so you are challenged now to do that.
Vice President Patterson.
Thank you. Sometimes sitting here, you get this certain vantage point that is just truly awesome. And I wish people could see what I see, particularly of this particular panel and the diversity of this particular panel. I have enjoyed all the statements, but to have you guys up and the diversity that I'm looking at, and then I look over here and I see what I'm assuming parents with their child between them, And we're talking about what is equity as far as allowing kids to have opportunities to go places, and I've heard all these stories. It has just truly been an amazing night for me. The upliftment that people are willing to give up, a vantage point that you guys worked very hard to get into these schools, but you're willing to fight for something to say, I would like everybody to have an opportunity like I had, even if it comes at my own expense of children I may have. I just think it's phenomenal. I can't say enough about how you look at the world, how you're going to lead the world, what you're going to do going forward. But I truly appreciate what you're doing right now, right here, and making a sizable difference in the narrative as we talk about legacy preference, because it's not coming from the elites or anybody who wants to give us something because they feel better, because they have all the privileges in the world and things like that. So now they feel like, okay, we're good. But it's coming from the mere people who have worked so hard to get to where you guys are. I just think it's phenomenal. I can't say enough about you guys. I look forward to voting in support of this. So thank you for giving me just this great vantage point and to hear your stories. Thank you.
President Thompson.
I appreciate all the testimonies tonight. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate you all hanging in there with us for several hours. But I do not have any questions for this panel. So I want to thank all of our public witnesses, because I believe that makes it the conclusion of public testimony. You all are excused. Members, okay, so we will now move on to vote on 2 state resolutions. I'm going to look for a motion and a second for each resolution, followed by Director Butler reading the resolution into the record. Once the resolution is read into the record, we will have member discussion in 3-minute rounds of statements. I don't know if that's going to be true, but before roll call votes are conducted. The first resolution to vote on is State Resolution SR 24-16, calling for an end to legacy and donor admission preferences in post-secondary education. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, Representative Goulet, is there a second?
Second.
Vice President Patterson. The motion has been properly moved and seconded by Representative Goulet and Vice President Patterson. Director Butler will read the resolution into the record.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I be recognized? At this time, I'd like to move just a motion for an amendment nature of substitute to the draft. It's before everyone here, just to make sure this is recorded for the record since it was circulated, and just ask that it be accepted as friendly. I'll briefly read the changes. In the draft resolution that was circulated online, we recognized 100 colleges and universities had stopped providing legacy preferences since 2015. That number actually went up to 400 in just 2 years. So when we got revised articles on that, we wanted to adjust that to note that 300 additional universities had banned the preference. We've also added on page 2, you see here in the strike and insert version, that New York has also introduced a ban on legacy admissions in their state legislature. So we wanted to make sure we reflected that recent turn of events, and then also just make sure that this quote was correctly phrased, that President Biden had made the quote. It could have been read that it was made by a group of individuals. So that last one on line 53 is just a technical change. So without objection, I would ask that those 3 changes plus the footnote that's included be accepted as friendly.
We actually don't have provisions for a friendly amendment, but if someone will second it,
okay.
You know, we can. So I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that.
All right. So now it's been properly moved and seconded. I guess we first vote on the amendment, accepting the amendment. I'm just trying to get the order of things right. And then we are voting on the, so first, all in favor of accepting the amendments listed by Representative Goulet and in front of you in writing, please vote in favor now.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. I'm going to go back to Director Butler.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
May I move a motion at this time to waive the reading of the resolution, please?
You may. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Did I hear an opposed? Okay, it doesn't matter because the motion carries. I mean, it's true. So, the motion has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the resolution, members?
Yeah, I'll just briefly say, Representative Goulet, I just want to thank you as well for being responsive to the work of Georgetown students and our broader educational community, as well as, you know, the work of Representative Henderson and making sure that we're being particular about what is in this resolution and how it will impact higher education in the district.
Yeah, I just want to recognize the that there is an unfairness of this that President Thompson has brought up, Representative Best has brought up, in that this is a practice that has been used for decades, and now now that more black families would be able to benefit from it, we're taking it away. I see the unfairness of that. I do ultimately conclude that the broader, fairer thing to do is to end the legacy admissions, but I do recognize that unfairness, and I think we probably all agree that the reversal of affirmative action practices has been harmful, and I hope that there is a future for practices like that to return. That's all.
Thank you. I just want to state what I stated at the very beginning, that equity work is very hard, especially sometimes when you have worked very hard to get to a certain place in life that provides you privileges or benefits of your hard work, and you would like to pass it down to your children. Equity work is hard when you have to make that decision because you know how hard you work to get there yourself. I truly appreciate the committee and how hard you guys worked to make sure that this had every consideration possible that you guys could put into it. This committee worked hard under the chairmanship of Representative Henderson, so I truly appreciate just the work that went into it to bring it to this point. I look forward to supporting it, and again, equity work is hard, but it does pay dividends in generations to come. So thank you.
Representative Goulet.
I'll keep my comments brief. I just also want to echo what Representative Patterson said and thank the chair of the committee for moving this forward and for his work and suggestions on it, and just thank my colleagues on this, and most of all thank the students for your leadership and advocacy, and echo what you said in terms of you worked so hard to get to this place and now you're willing to share it with others. You know, you make sure that your children don't have an unfair advantage, and it's just really, it's amazing, and you are all amazing, and it's just really an honor to be around you. So thanks for everything you've done today, and I look forward to keeping working with you because this is only step one. We got to go get this done at the DC Council next. So thank you all.
All right. I have thoughts. I'm not necessarily, I don't know how I would feel voting for this, because I think about just so much of not just my existence, but living in this city reminds me how much black folks just do not get to have generational wealth. And anti-blackness is very real and it's very specific. It is not the same as diversity for all, and that's not polite to say or nice to say or kind to say. And yes, I show up in yellow everywhere and dress like a Care Bear. But it is real that only 13% of black people get to pass on any generational inheritance, any, to their families, which is very different than white people. and what white people have been able to do for generations. And so I fully understand that overwhelmingly wealthy white people benefit from this. I understand. And if I was able to design the world years and years and years ago, legacy admissions would not exist. I also very much struggle with the idea and like, what are the right things to put in place so that we stop interchanging words like black and poor? Because people do that freely in conversation. We did it when we were having a discussion about this resolution, and folks were like, well, if people just accept more Pell Grant recipients, then that means they're accepting more black people. And I get that overwhelmingly, yes, that is many of us. I also know that's not all of us, and I want a world where there's not all of us. And that's really important to me. And so I have not done any work to whip folks against this resolution. I do, though, want to be very honest in my concerns in the world that I would like to be true for all of us. Because I know that sometimes when you acknowledge what is the exception, like what happened, like the way we lost the affirmative action case, it wasn't a white student's case that took affirmative action from us. It was actually an Asian student trying to get into Harvard. Like, it's not the Harvards of the world that are the great equalizers for the most part. It's mostly like the state institutions. It's the HBCUs. It's the historically Latino serving institutions, and that's the truth. But it also does pain me very much that there are not enough black people who are the masters of the universe. And I don't think that should be true. I don't think that should be true for black people. I don't think that should be true for brown people, because overwhelmingly it's too many of us that exist just as humans for that to not be a reflection of so many of the decisions have been made. And it almost feels like on a regular basis, it doesn't matter what decisions you make. It almost feels like black people are going to be harmed regardless, some of us. And that is what I am struggling with. And so I just want to be very honest about that, because the world is not black and white, and things are not simple. And the same people who maybe go to and graduate from a Georgetown, and I'm gonna be honest about something else, Georgetown's actually a lot worse than a lot of other places, and we could talk about that offline since y'all hung in to the back, to the last of this meeting. But overwhelmingly, just because you are a black person that graduates from a Georgetown or graduates from a Penn, you will not necessarily be afforded all of the same privileges and opportunities that generational whiteness or just whiteness in general allows to people. And that's true. And so that is what I am wrestling with. That is why I don't feel wholly excited about this, even though I very much appreciate, I very much respect, and I am very much compelled by many of the things that were shared tonight. I have lived many of those things. And so I think it is always important for us to just lift up as many narratives as possible, which you all have done tonight. But I would be dishonest if I didn't say to you that I also see, a lot of black people who are not just privileged, who are like, what do I do? Like, what do I say to my kid? Or what do I say to my grandparent? Or what do I say to, you know what I mean? Like, that is the thing. And so I fully understand this resolution will pass this evening, but I do want to fully and very uncomfortably share what is happening in my head and my feelings about it. I don't believe there are any other member comments. I want to make sure that is true. It doesn't have to be true, but that is why I paused. All right. I am going to Director Butler because the motion is to adopt SR 24-16, and Director Butler will call the roll.
Representative Kelly.
Yes.
Representative Washington.
Yes.
Representative Chang.
Aye.
Representative Goulet.
Yes.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative O'Leary.
Aye.
Representative Williams.
Aye.
Vice President Patterson.
Aye.
President Thompson.
No.
The State Board has passed SR 24-16, State Board of Education resolution calling for an end to legacy and donor admission preferences in post-secondary education.
All right, we have another resolution. We are moving on to Resolution SR 24-17, appointing, I didn't realize it was going to be on here today, appointing me, Ebony Rose Thompson, to the Community Schools Advisory Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
The motion has been moved by Vice President Patterson. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Representative O'Leary got there first. The motion has been properly moved and seconded. Director Butler, are we reading this resolution to the record, or is someone going to?
I'll move a motion to waive the reading of the resolution, SR 24-17.
All right, so moved Representative Goulet and a second from Representative Patterson. First, we will vote on the waiving of the reading. All in favor of waiving the reading?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, since Director Butler is not reading the resolution into the record, is there discussion on the resolution? Okay. If there is no discussion, and I would just note that I think this committee had stopped meeting for a while. Why are we doing this now? I forgot.
During the budget process, when we were
That's right.
during the council, during the budget process, we normally appoint all committees in March or April of the year. This year, the funding had been cut by the mayor for this committee, and so they had stopped meeting, and they were not sure if the committee was going to proceed. The council put funding back in the budget when they passed it in June, and so the committee resumed meeting this month.
Yes, this morning. I went this morning because they had stopped. So that's why we are doing this now and not when we normally do all the appointments. If there is no further discussion, the motion is to adopt SR 24-17, and Director Butler will call the roll.
Representative Kelly.
Yes.
Representative Washington.
Aye.
Representative Chang.
Yes.
Representative Goulet.
Yes.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative O'Leary.
Aye.
Representative Williams.
Aye.
Vice President Patterson.
Aye.
President Thompson.
Aye.
SR 24-17, appointing Ebony Rose Thompson to the Community Schools Advisory Committee has passed unanimously.
All right. Thank you, members. The State Board will now move to adopt a consent agenda for our ceremonial resolutions, unless there are any, wait a minute, unless there are any items that folks want to remove from the consent agenda. I am going to have Director Butler read the titles of the resolution so we know if there are any that we would like to remove. Director Butler.
Yes. CR 24-3, recognizing the 2023-2024 student representative, Michaela Kelly. CR 24-4, recognizing the 2023-2024 student representative, Joseph Villaflor. CR 24-5, recognizing the 2022 through 2024 student representative, Taya Washington. And CR 24-6, recognizing the 2023-2024 student representative, Benjamin Yarkin.
Members, are there any items you would like to remove from the consent agenda?
Madam Chair.
Representative Glay, I'm here first.
May I remove CR 24-3 and CR 24-5 from the consent agenda for the purposes of having Executive Director Butler read them into the record?
All right.
Second?
We actually don't need a second to remove items from the consent agenda. I know. Okay, well, is there anything else? Are we good on those two? All right, we're good on those two. So if, since we are removing those items, because we will have to vote on them separately, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda items, which are the remaining resolutions?
So moved.
Thank you, Representative Henderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Representative Patterson. The motion has been properly moved and seconded. The motion, and it's now open for discussion. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Okay. I will say, even though Representative Villaflor and Representative Yarkin, who we, I guess, sometimes also call Governor Yarkin, because I'm pretty sure he will be governor of somewhere someday, are not here, their presence has been very much not just felt, but wonderful to have on this board. And so even though they're not here to hear it, maybe they're watching somewhere, we do very much appreciate all of their work that they do, not just at these meetings, but leading our student advisory committee alongside the lovely ladies who are here with us. So I just want to state that for the record, even though we're not going to read their resolutions. If there is no other discussion on these resolutions, the motion is on adopting the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Motion carries. All right. So we are going to vote now on the CRs that have been removed from the consent agenda. So the first is, because I don't have it in my... Okay, so first is CR 24-3. I do need someone to move it.
So moved.
Thank you, Vice President Patterson. I also need a second.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'm sorry, Director Butler, we got to read it into the record.
State Board of Education ceremonial resolution recognizing the 2023-2024 student representative, Michaela Kelly. Whereas the DC State Board of Education is committed to advancing academic outcomes for all students in the District of Columbia, regardless of their background. Whereas student voice and representation are critical components of the State Board's work. Whereas the Student Advisory Committee was established in March of 2015 to provide a voice for all students in the District of Columbia and to promote communication between the State Board, students, and other education decision makers. Whereas the SAC has met monthly to discuss policy issues of importance to students, convene speakers and presenters to share insights, and engage with their respective students at district high schools to advance the work of the State Board. Whereas Michaela Kelly, who graduated this year from Benjamin Banneker Academic High School, was appointed as the State Board Student Representative in 2023. Whereas Ms. Kelly has demonstrated exceptional leadership as a member of the School Community and Wellbeing Committee, worked diligently to ensure student involvement in discussions surrounding mental health support in district schools. Whereas Ms. Kelly made significant contributions to the SAC, including specific suggestions that will further improve the application and selection process and ensure more students are aware of the opportunity. Whereas Ms. Kelly has actively promoted mental health awareness and initiatives among her peers by serving as a young mental health advisor with Our Minds Matter. Whereas Ms. Kelly's commitment to her school community is further evidenced by her role as junior class president for the academic year of 2023 through 2024. Whereas she has shown exemplary leadership and dedication, and whereas Ms. Kelly's academic achievements include second place in the board presentation at the One World Academy Challenge, third place in the Department of Veteran Affairs Headquarters Chapter of Blacks in Government 2022 oratorical competition, coupled with her unwavering commitment to improving the quality of education in the District of Columbia, showcase her excellence in both academics and public service. Now therefore be it resolved that the DC State Board of Education recognizes Michaela Kelly's contributions and exemplary service to the District of Columbia on behalf of fellow students. And be it finally resolved that the State Board wishes Michaela Kelly the best of luck in her studies at Spelman College and all future endeavors.
All right, now, members, is there any discussion?
I just want to say thank you.
You want to say thank you? People are about to say nice things about you, so you can say thank you again. Okay. I'm going to come to the people saying nice things about you to embarrass you first. Representative Patterson.
All right, young lady. I just so appreciate you helping me throughout the years as I serve, because I always look to you. We have this connection we do about certain issues and things like that. And I look to you to see how you're feeling, what your expressions are and things like that, to kind of guide me in my questions and my thoughts around resolutions. So I truly appreciate you. You are phenomenal. I'm so happy that you also focused on mental health. As a person who has a son that has suffered some mental health, that work is so important. And that it has your perspective makes it that much better, because you understand what students are going through a lot better than what we do. Also, last but not least, I'm so happy you're about to be a Spelman woman. Spelman women change the world. That is their saying. I have a Spelman woman daughter. So you are about to, and your parents are about to have an amazing experience. Hope they don't cry too much when they have to leave, because it's going to be interesting when they say, okay, now she is now ours at Spelman. But just looking forward to hearing so many things about you. And you know we are always here. We are part of your village, and we are here for you even as you leave this board and go on to these great things you're about to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, more nice things about Michaela. I have nice things to say about Michaela. I remember going to swear in Michaela at Banneker, and I'm convinced that I was meant to do that, because it took a lot. I think somebody hit my car on my way to make it. No, literally, it was like a crazy. They hit the rental car after somebody had hit my actual car, and when I got to Banneker, none of that mattered, because is that your aunt? Yes, your aunt was so proud. And she was like, well, let me tell you all about Michaela and all the things she did before she came from Banneker, and we live in Ward 8. And then she started telling me about your family members. And she was like, and they do this, and we did that, and we're these. And I was just like, yes, it does, because Director Butler was like, are you sure you're going to make it? And I was like, I'm going to make it. And I was so happy to have you on the board, just because I could tell by your energy that you were like quiet, but you were very thoughtful. And you come across as a little shy, because you're like, I don't know if I, but when you do ask a question or you do say it, it's like it matters. And so I'm so happy that I don't know what made you apply, but that you applied. I'm so happy that you show up to every single meeting. I appreciate that your face is loud like mine, because I can see you over there thinking, like chewing on the thoughts, which is not to be confused. It's like, oh, I'm not happy to be here, or I'm uncomfortable. It's literally like, I can see how much energy you're putting into thinking about what people are putting before you. And I'm so grateful for that level of patience and thoughtfulness and consideration, because most people don't have that. And they will say at a young age, but that's at any age. Most people don't have that. And so I'm so excited to see everything you do moving forward, and I'm very grateful for the time that you have been here with us. Representative Washington.
I just want to say you're an incredible person. It has been amazing not only working alongside you, but becoming your friend and getting to know you across this past year. I'm just grateful to have met you, grateful that you applied, grateful you're here, and I know you're going to do incredible things. So please stay in touch, and good luck at Spelman.
Thank you both. Thank you so much.
All right. The motion is on, or the, yes, the resolution is on Michaela. So, all in favor of passing this ceremonial resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. I am coming, and we can clap again, that's fine. All right. We are coming to our second ceremonial resolution for the evening. So first, I'm going to look for someone to move that resolution.
So moved.
Thank you, Representative Williams. I'm also going to look for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Representative Henderson. And then I'm going to look at Director Butler to read the resolution into the record.
State Board of Education Ceremonial Resolution recognizing 2022 through 2024 Student Representative Taya Washington. Whereas the DC State Board of Education is committed to advancing academic outcomes for all students in the District of Columbia, regardless of their background. Whereas student voice and representation are critical components of the State Board's work. Whereas the Student Advisory Committee was established in March 2015 to provide a voice for all students in the District of Columbia and to promote communication between the State Board, students, and other education decision makers. Whereas the SAC has met monthly to discuss education policy issues of importance to students, convene speakers and presenters to share insights and engage with their prospective students at district high schools to advance the work of the State Board. Whereas Taya Washington, who graduated this year from Basis DC Public Charter School, was first appointed to the student board, first appointed as a State Board student representative in 2022. Whereas Ms. Washington has served 2 terms as a student representative with distinction, demonstrating a deep commitment to public service and her community. Whereas Ms. Washington's leadership was instrumental in the 2023-2024 SAC, hosting the first ever community roundtable, fostering a valuable dialogue between students and the public. Whereas Ms. Washington is actively involved within her school, including as a member of the Black Student Union and student government. Whereas Ms. Washington has broadened her knowledge and advocacy by attending and presenting sessions at the National Association for State Board of Education and the Aurora Institute conferences. Whereas Ms. Washington's dedication to youth empowerment extends beyond the State Board, exemplified through her service as the State Director of the DC chapter of the Youth Legislative Action Center, the City Council Chair of the YMCA DC Youth and Government, a member of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Youth Advisory Council, and a delegate to the YMCA Youth Conference on National Affairs. Whereas Ms. Washington served on the Outreach and Advocacy Committee in 2022 and the State Level and Systemic Policy Committee in 2023, using her voice to champion student safety, and mental health as top priorities. Whereas Ms. Washington consistently demonstrated exceptional leadership, thoughtful collaboration, and a commitment to ensuring students have a seat at the table. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the DC State Board of Education recognizes Taya Washington's contributions and exemplary service to the District of Columbia on behalf of fellow students. And be it finally resolved that the State Board wishes Taya Washington the best of luck in her studies at Howard University and all future endeavors.
All right, members, is there any discussion? Representative Henderson, Representative Williams after Representative Henderson. All right, we're going to do this. Yes.
Thanks. I will say of all the student members, but I can say especially of Representatives Kelly and Washington, that you make the board better, and we appreciate all that you've brought to this iteration of the board and wish you well in their future.
Yeah, I'll go quickly too. I echo Representative Henderson's statement, so congratulations, Representative Kelly. I'm looking forward to hearing what you do next, and thank you for all your contributions. And Representative Washington, it's been a pleasure to see you grow throughout the last 2 years. You're not going far, still going to be in Ward 1 in DC. And just thank you for your communication, your steadfastness, being reliable, and your contributions to the State Board.
When I think about you and the relationship that we've had, the first thing that comes to mind is a quiet storm. Your volume may not be loud, but when you're advocating for something such as tonight's panel, and everybody should know that was you, and you stick to it, and you make sure that we follow through on those type of things. So to me, you've always been that quiet storm. Whatever the issue is, you're going to make sure that we attend to it. You're not going to be the loudest in the room or anything like that. You're going to get your points across. And I so appreciate that approach, that you have that tenacity. I'm wishing you all the best at HU and that you do amazing things. We get to watch you since you are here in the district, and we'll be holding you accountable as well to do the same thing at Howard, okay? Wish you all the best.
Quiet as it's kept, as Toni Morrison would say. When Taya was leading a workshop at the NASB conference, she was really loud, which she has never been in any of our meetings, because she's always just talking like this, and you have to really struggle just to hear what she says. But she's going to be around all the time, and she's going to shine on the hilltop. It was great working with you for 2 years.
I just want to say thank you so much, Taya, for being a friend to me. Just like giving me suggestions and ideas for the SAC, and just helping me. You inspire me, and just thank you so much. And I'm glad to have met you, and I wish you the best at Howard. And glad that you chose HBCU too. So, yeah.
Representative Goulet.
I'll just speak to both Taya and Michaela here. Just congratulations to you both. I'm so honored to have served with you up here for this year, and you got to come back and tell us what you've learned. Come speak, come email us, and let us know what we can do better, because you're going to learn a lot, and I know you're not going far. You'll be back too. You're going far, but you can come back and see us, and just let us know what you've learned, because I think this is going to be really exciting. You've got the perspective of seeing this side of things. You'll get out, you'll have new experiences, learn new things. I really mean it. Come back and share those with us, and inform us on how we can do things better here in DC based on all the new things you learn and all the new things you experience. So thank you both. It's been an honor, and I wish you both the best of luck in this new adventure.
Okay. Thoughts about Representative Washington? And do you want to go before me? You can. And just because I go doesn't mean it's over. It's up to you. It's your resolution. Okay. Thoughts about Representative Washington. So I don't think you all know how many meetings, especially when Representative O'Leary was Vice President O'Leary, he was like, I don't know what she's saying. Can she speak up? And I would, be like, it's going to be okay. But every time, it was worth leaning in and listening to. And so while we do encourage you to speak up, because it's worth it every time, so we do want people to hear you, the times where you have stepped up, raised your voice, no matter what the volume, it has been absolutely impressive and beneficial. The NASB conference, I just want to underscore how unique it is for a student to present at the National Associations of the State Boards of Education. First of all, most boards in the country do not have students, period. We are the exception. We are not the rule. Most boards don't have, what are we, elected adult members? All boards aren't elected. So adult members who submit proposals to be selected to even go before the audience at the National Association of State Boards of Education. But Taya did both of those things. And then not only was her session well attended, her session was one of the highest rated at that entire conference from literally people who lead in education from around the country. And so when I say, despite Taya's volume, whenever she speaks up, whenever she puts her mind to it, she speaks volumes, I do mean it, and the data would reflect that. And so I am so happy that you made the choice not just to join the board, but then to come back, because you could have broken up with us and you didn't. And so I'm glad that you returned. I'm grateful that you all do the work to lead the Student Advisory Committee, because you all do a wonderful job of that. And whoever our next student reps will be, they will have very big shoes to fill. And I will lastly say, in addition to the volume, I do encourage you to try more foods. So I noticed at the NASB conference, you ate like 2 things. So if you want to go to lunch one day, I will buy you lunch of other things we can explore together since you will be here, because I want you to have just all the joy in the world. And so thank you, Representative Washington, for everything you've done. So excited to see everything you will do. And I will yield the floor to you.
I just want to say thank you. I definitely want to take you up on your lunch offer. But I want to say thank you all to all the members and especially to all the staff just for helping me grow as a person over these past 2 years, grow in my voice as well. Being on the board has really shaped my life. This is an experience that I'll probably never forget, and I'm truly grateful for. So I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here and help fostering me as a person. So thank you.
I will say, as we close discussion, Michaela, that invite to lunch is also open to you as well, even though you're leaving us to go to Georgia. All right.
I just want to say thank you, like Taya said, to all the staff, to all the reps, and thank you, Taya, again, for allowing me to be here, especially coming from Ward 8. I didn't think I would ever get this opportunity, so as soon as I got the acceptance, I was so happy to be able to use my voice and do something different especially out of my comfort zone too. So thank you. It's been a wonderful experience, and I hope to see more people apply.
All right. If the applause is any indication, we are ready for the vote. So I'm going to ask for all in favor of this resolution.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Motion carries. Thank you, representatives. All right, that is our last item on the agenda. for this evening, which I think is a great way to end the night, unless members have any announcements or comments they want to make as new business before we adjourn.
I have just one.
Representative
I want to thank you all for staying. This is the most people we've ever had at this time of night. And yeah, I don't think, well, maybe maybe the green people.
The green people.
The Green New Deal.
But this was fabulous tonight.
Yes, most people say their piece and then they run out. So Representative O'Leary is correct in issuing his appreciation. Any other members with announcements or new business items? Director Butler.
Yes, we're going to ask all of the elected state board members and our student representatives to gather in the front for a photo after the adjournment.
Okay, perfect. I do have an announcement. We have a back-to-school event in Ward 7 on August 17th. Registration will probably go live this weekend. Folks can email me if they are interested in learning more about that, but it is the annual back-to-school event. I'll make sure to see Representative Patterson there because he is at large, but all are welcome. So that'll be August 17th, 11 to 2, Benningham, Minnesota, East River Shopping Center. Last call for announcements. Yes.
Well, can I ask for an announcement? The back-to-school meeting, if I, you may have discussed it earlier and I was just reading this stuff, but can you just put the date on the record again for folks for the session and explain a little bit about what that's about so people can join us?
Wait a minute. What is the date of the back-to-school
It's the 5th, I
engagement
think.
event?
So it will be August 5th.
I don't want to get it wrong. Okay.
Monday. The state board will hold a virtual back-to-school engagement event for students and families who have any concerns or questions they want to bring before the board before school opens, so that we have time to share those with the appropriate DC government officials. That will be a virtual event. Registration will open for that this Friday.
Okay.
So it is August the 5th from 5:30 to 6:30, and it will be virtual.
Yes, it is virtual, and I hear you, Representative O'Leary, it is before the working session, because that way, if there are things that come out of the engagement, we can discuss them at the working session. Last call. That was a good one. Thank you, Representative Goulet. If not, I am going to thank members. I'm going to thank everyone in the chamber for hanging in there with us, and anyone who is online who we do not see for their time and engagement tonight. And Representative Chang for being our guinea pig. This was successful. I don't think you know how excited we are. We have not been able to offer hybrid options reliably, and so this is like literally advocacy. Money went into this, diligence went in, all the things went into this. So we will look forward for offering hybrid options in the future beyond Representative Chang. So I'm going to thank everyone for their time and engagement tonight. We will convene our next working session as was noted earlier on August 7th. That is a Wednesday. As a reminder to members and the viewing public, the State Board will not hold a public meeting in August. I repeat, the State Board will not hold a public meeting in August. It is the closest we get to recess. Seeing no further business before the State Board, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, somebody seconded it, which is what matters. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, the ayes have it, and this public meeting of the DC State Board of Education is adjourned at, we might as well just call it 9:30 p.m.